one for local news, traffic, and weather for Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News 1011 everywhere.
It's Wednesday, September 28th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls, 11 degrees. Here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. Less than 4 weeks before voting on who people would like to see as their new mayor and council. Now, 3 opportunities left to cast a ballot. Advance polls next Friday and the Friday following, and then Election Day on October 24th. Now, candidates for mayor in Ottawa continue to unveil their platforms. With that story, here's City News reporter Chris Curries.
We have a couple of policy announcements this morning. At the same time, Catherine McKenney will reveal what they call a significant announcement. No details just yet on that. And also at 11, Mike Maguire will be revealing his environmental platform, which includes the building of a commuter rail line from Canada to Orleans, reconsidering Ottawa's $57 billion energy evolution plan, and increasing the reliance on nuclear power generation. Now, the timing on that comes as 5 candidates, including McKenney, Bob Shirelli, and Mark Sutcliffe, are participating in the 4th and final environmental debate today. That's taking place at the Centertown United Church and will be available to watch on Rogers TV. A reminder that voting day is on October 24th, but there are 2 more early days to cast your ballot, October 7th and 14th. Chris Curries, City News.
City News time, 9:01. Now your forecast. Here's meteorologist Jill Taylor.
We will gradually get out of this rather gloomy weather pattern, and it'll probably take all day into the evening to clear out, though. 14 for the high today. That's in a brisk wind out of the north-northwest. Any showers through the morning won't last long. 4 degrees for the low, cool overnight. Sun and cloud tomorrow and 13. For today, the high, 14.
And right now, 11 degrees in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls. After knocking out power across the entire country of Cuba, Hurricane Ian is gaining strength now. It's approaching Florida.
Hurricane Ian is a Category 4 storm. Eric Blake of the National Hurricane Center says the storm's surge could cause catastrophic damage, and from Naples to Sarasota is at high risk.
The entire Florida Peninsula and the Florida Keys will have significant effect from this hurricane.
Ian gained strength after battering Cuba, bringing down the island's power grid. Authorities in Florida are still urging people to evacuate the danger zone if they still can. I'm Donna Warder.
Now, more than 163,000 homes and businesses in Atlantic Canada still without power. Hydro Ottawa and Hydro One crews have arrived on the scene. They are helping out. Scores of homes were flattened, roads washed out. The resulting cleanup from Fiona expected to take months, if not years. There was also record-breaking storm blamed for a couple of deaths in Newfoundland and Labrador and one in Nova Scotia. Now, Newfoundland's Premier Andrew Furey will be in Port aux Basques today, along with the Prime Minister. Furey will be announcing a $30 million relief package for the affected residents there. City News time, 9:03. Provincial police asking for help to find a man wanted for breaching his release conditions. 44-year-old Adam Williams is white, 5'9", weighs 190 pounds. He has brown hair and brown eyes. We have a picture up at ottawa.citynews.ca. He's known to frequent places like Smiths Falls, Perth, and Ottawa, as well as other locations through southern Ontario. Anyone who has contact with him is asked to get in touch with police. And another rapid bridge replacement is on this weekend on the 417. This is the Rochester Street Bridge. So traffic on the 417 will be closed off on a 5-kilometer stretch that runs from Metcalfe to the Carling and Kirkwood exits. The closure starts at 8 Friday night, ends, at least scheduled, at 6 o'clock on Tuesday morning. I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Say X,
he's got the Y.
It's the Rob Snow Show on Rogers TV and City News.
1011 FM and 1310 AM.
Oh, bit of a chill in the air this morning. Normal daytime high for this time of year. 16, 17 degrees. We could be seeing that by the weekend. Good morning. Welcome to the Rob Snow Show on City News. Coming up, Rob Boyd. Rob Boyd has been on the front lines of Ottawa's drug addiction problem for about 2 decades. He's been engaged in all the battles and all the debates. about things like needle exchange programs and supervised injection sites, and he's been in the thick of it, dealing with the overdose crisis and the opioid crisis, and this has been a hot topic here on the Rob Snow Show over the last week or so. Rob Boyd is the OASIS program director, Sandy Hill Community Health Center. So we're going to talk about things like harm reduction, the push for a clean drug supply, and maybe someday the decriminalization of all hard street drugs. That's coming up in just a few minutes from now. Then the political fix. And there is plenty in the mix for the political fix. The polls have been tilting in favor of the Conservatives recently. There was a Main Street research poll released over the weekend, and it had the Poilievre-led Conservative Party of Canada at 41%. I mean, I haven't seen that kind of number for the Conservative Party in a long, long time. 41%, and you are talking about, in all likelihood, with relative ease, Prime Minister Pierre Poilievre. Try that on for size. All right, let's not get too ahead of ourselves. There's no election on the horizon. But also interesting, in this Main Street poll, the pollster, Keto Maggie, asked, what is your level of trust in the Canadian media? Or what some might call the legacy media, the traditional Canadian media. What is your level of trust in the traditional Canadian media? And David, you should think about a career change, my boy. Okay. 38%. Okay, so let's round it up to 40. 38% said they either strongly distrust or somewhat distrust the traditional Canadian media. 4 out of 10. That is not good news for people like me. 24% of those polled strongly distrust the legacy media in this country. Another 14% somewhat distrust the media. And 41% of those polled said the news media in Canada has a left-wing bias. A left-wing bias. You don't say. That was from Main Street Research. And then there was a poll released this week by the Angus Reid Institute, came out yesterday. Conservatives up by 7, 37-30 over the Liberals. Top 5 issues for Canadians right now, according to the Angus Reid Institute. Number 1, the cost of living, inflation. Then it's health care. Then it was the environment and climate change, followed by housing affordability and the economy. That kind of catch-all. The economy. The economy. The top words, I found this interesting. Top words used to describe Prime Minister Trudeau: arrogant, dishonest, corrupt, and weak. Other than that, Canadians think he's doing a heck of a job. We'll get into that. Also might talk about what's going on in Quebec, where Premier Legault is about to be reelected with a massive majority government, and the parties that have dominated Quebec politics for most of my life, the Liberal Party of Quebec and the Parti Québécois, are about to go down to historic defeat, with the PQ perhaps winning no seats at all. And we might even touch on this mayor's race that we have here in Ottawa, which is really heating up. The sparks are flying. The trolls are trolling. I've never really seen anything quite like it, to tell you the truth. The nastiness. I mean, we're talking about the town that fun forgot, but my gosh, it is sleepy old Ottawa. The nastiness of this municipal election campaign is one for the record books, and may I suggest, nothing to be proud of. All it does is turn people off of politics. And why would anyone run for office if this is what awaits them? your political fix after the 9:30 news. Every week we take a closer look at some of the biggest international news stories with Geoffrey Johnston from the Kingston Whig Standard, global affairs columnist there. 2 stories in focus for us today. There's the war, Russia's illegal invasion of Ukraine, the videos on social media that I have seen of these Russians being drafted. Hard to watch. I will also point out, hard to know what's true and what's not true. Okay, you know, what's true and what's just propaganda. The first casualty of war is the truth. But these men, you know, those that haven't fled the country to avoid the draft, I mean, it looks like they're being set up to be cannon fodder, to tell you the truth. Very little training, no supplies to speak of. Some might say it's hard to feel sorry for them, given what their orders are. But nevertheless, there's that angle to the story, this mobilization effort by Putin. Then there's these sham votes in the eastern regions of Ukraine. It's like Crimea 2014 all over again. The Russian leadership is claiming the people in those regions have spoken. They want to be part of Russia. It's such a joke. Like 99% support, 98% supporting annexation. I doubt it. Imagine you go to vote. Imagine this, okay? And a Russian soldier is pointing a rifle at you. Okay? You know, what way do you think people are going to vote? Geoffrey Johnston with his analysis on what's been happening there. We'll talk about what's going on in Iran with these mass protests led by women who don't want to be forced to wear the hijab. Forced to wear the hijab. There have been these kinds of protests before, and the Islamic Republic has been brutal in putting them down. They will shoot people dead in the streets. So what is the likelihood of another revolution in Iran? Geoffrey Johnston after the 11 o'clock news. For the Talkback Hour today, climate change and the carbon tax. That is this week's great divide in federal politics. Climate change and the carbon tax. You see, the Liberals have tried to go after Pierre Poilievre about Bitcoin. Bitcoin. If we followed Poilievre's advice on Bitcoin, we'd be broke. Meantime, the Canadian dollar goes down and down and down a little bit every day. It's below 73 cents U.S. now. But the Bitcoin stuff hasn't really stuck to Poilievre. So now it's become a fight over the carbon tax, what the Liberals call the price on pollution. Poilievre says he would cancel the carbon tax. The Liberals say that's irresponsible and it can't be free to pollute. And besides, whatever you here in Ontario pay in carbon tax, you get all that money back. It might even be a moneymaker for you because it's the best tax ever, and Poilievre wants to take that money away. Hey, why are you taking it in the first place? What I want to know this morning, as my parents spend their 5th day without electricity because of a massive storm, and as another hurricane rolls toward Florida, sure to be all over the cable news networks, is this carbon tax working? Is it even effective as a tool to fight climate change? Climate change seems to be as bad as ever with extreme weather events. Is the Trudeau government's carbon tax even working? Where is the evidence that it's working? Is it doing anything to help in the fight against climate change? 750-1310. That's our Talkback Hour question after the 10 o'clock news. This is the Rob Snow Show on City News.
Closed captioning is brought to you in part by Raven Reads. Unbox Indigenous voices. Subscribe today at ravenreads.org.
The houseless crisis, because it really is a crisis down here on Rideau Street. There is not enough shelters for men especially, and we need to be helping our most vulnerable.
At St. John Ambulance, we're all about community. We teach life-saving skills and provide community support through our volunteer services. All St. John Ambulance product sales and training registrations support these important services. Volunteer, donate, or enroll in a program today so we can continue to have an impact on our community. Visit sja.ca to learn more. At St. John Ambulance, we do more than save lives, we change lives.
We fought our way through Italy and then headed for Amsterdam, sweeping for Germans along the way. Our worst fear was to catch a bullet in these last hours of the war.
I was 15 when the Nazis invaded the Netherlands. More than 100,000 Dutch Jews never came home. Our men were put into forced labor. By 1945, we were starving. The food drops gave us hope. And then the Canadians came.
Before Amsterdam, I couldn't have explained why we were there, all those years away from home, but the Dutch showed us why it mattered.
Papa wanted me to bring some soldiers home to thank them personally, and that's when I first saw Wilf, and I invited him over that afternoon.
Marguerite Blaise married Lieutenant Wilf Gildersleeve. They moved to Vancouver, where they raised 8 children. Today, the Dutch still remember the Canadians who liberated them.
Enjoy the fresh outdoors. Play an important role in the lives of school-age children. Get paid to make a difference in your community. Become a crossing guard. We are currently recruiting crossing guards for the school year. We offer a competitive wage with various perks and opportunities for bonuses. Join the Ottawa Safety Council in keeping kids safe in the nation's capital. Find out more at crossing-guard.ca.
Every year, dozens of Canadians are killed or seriously injured because they take risks around railway tracks. Talk to your loved ones about rail safety. Visit stoptracktragedies.ca.
Hi guys, my name is Vi and I'm a part of Encore Ottawa 3. My set at the Meridian Theatre is coming out this week and I hope you tune in.
It's been 2 years later, still.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
As promised, Rob Boyd, OASIS Program Director, Sandy Hill Community Health Center. Good morning.
Good morning, Rob.
Nice to hear from you. What do you do at the OASIS Program Director at the Sandy Hill Community Health Center? What is OASIS? How does that help people?
Yeah, so OASIS, it's a program within the Sandy Hill Community Health Center that provides health and social services for people who use drugs. So we have a walk-in medical clinic here. We have an opioid agonist treatment program, like a methadone and Suboxone. We have a drop-in center. We offer counseling, case management services for people. In addition to that, we have our supervised consumption site.
Okay. Busy?
Yes, very busy. During the pandemic, we actually saw more people than we did prior to the pandemic, as we kept our doors open during that time as well, of course, because we were still dealing with the opioid crisis in addition to the pandemic at the same time. So it's a very, very busy, very busy spot.
Okay, how would you describe right now the substance abuse problem in Ottawa? I've heard it described recently, for example, by someone at Inner City Health as a substance abuse epidemic, that it's not just an opioid epidemic, it's a substance abuse epidemic. How would you describe it?
Certainly I would agree with that, because we are talking, beyond just the opioids. We're also talking about some significant shifts in terms of what's in the unregulated drug supply. So, we have seen in the last few years crystal methamphetamine, for example, taking hold in Ottawa, which we really didn't experience 5 years ago, we didn't have any crystal meth on the streets. It was largely crack cocaine. In addition to that, we are also seeing a lot of benzo-like drugs in the drug supply as well, which is, really shifts the vulnerability and the risk of people using drugs, but also really makes it a lot more challenging to provide services to the people who are coming in. And then you layer on top of that the challenges that are created by the fentanyl supply in the unregulated market, which make the interventions that much more difficult to try to stabilize people. So, but there's a lot of different things that are happening, and people are using both the stimulant drugs and the sedative drugs at the same time, and in order to try to kind of balance out the intensity of the experience that they're having.
Okay. I mean, uppers and downers, is it that kind of thing, I guess? Or, I mean, is it?
Yeah, so people, right. because the fentanyl can be so, oversedating for people, they're looking to try to balance that by having some stimulants on board as well.
Okay, but this thing with methamphetamine, you say that's a new phenomenon for Ottawa. You haven't seen a lot of that in Ottawa.
Yeah, we're not that experienced. We're not that experienced with it, and it's people who are on methamphetamine. Some people are on methamphetamine for some time. They can become a lot more irritable. They have some impulse control problems. It's different in nature. I mean, stimulants in general can have that impact on people. There's a lot of sleeplessness that happens with it. But methamphetamine is a different sort of drug that does require different sorts of intervention, and there's not an awful lot that we can do medically for people. So there's nothing like methadone for people who are on stimulant drugs like cocaine and methamphetamine.
Okay, all right. And the situation with, what did you call it? Benzo type drugs. What's that all about? What do you suspect is happening there? And why is that worrisome? What's happening there
is that people are going to sleep, and they're really difficult to rouse, and they can be like that for hours. So what happens in a supervised consumption site is that we are able to provide some medical monitoring for people, but we weren't really set up for monitoring people for long periods of time, and there's an ongoing risk that they could still overdose. So they have to be looked after while they're in that state. And so we've recently done some renovations on our site to improve our capacity to monitor people who are having benzo overdoses. But this is not something that was on our radar. That was that we would have to deal with when we were setting things up. Yeah. And the other thing about the benzos and the drug supply is it makes people very, very vulnerable out there, because if they're not in a supervised consumption site and they are in they have benzos and they go to sleep, they're very vulnerable in terms of assault, robbery, sexual assault, and things like that. So it's a very high risk space that it puts people into.
Right. So this is interesting, because one of the questions I wanted to ask you is we've taken a number of calls from people who are concerned about some of the problems in Sandy Hill, along Rideau Street, Lower Town, the Byward Market, that they see people who, they don't look like they've gone to sleep. They don't have a sleeping bag. They don't have a tent. They don't have a blanket, anything. It looks like they are just passed out, that they maybe have taken some of these benzo-type drugs and they have just passed out. And maybe that's what's happening. Maybe that's what people are seeing. For example, a merchant from the Rideau Centre called me and said there was someone on Rideau Street, half their body was on the street. And that's what, it sounds like that's what you might be describing, Mr. Boyd. Am I on the right track there?
Yeah, it certainly could be somebody who's on a benzo overdose. It could also, of course, be an opioid overdose that the person is experiencing. In addition to that, it could also be alcohol overdose as well. So there's quite a bit of all of that. That
could be all three. Who knows, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. It's terrible. Okay. Where is Ottawa with this push for a clean drug supply? Clean drug supply.
Yeah. So Ottawa has a good sized pilot that's happening right now. There are about 300 to 400 people who are on the Safer Supply program.
Okay.
There is soon going to be some published outcomes of that. It's been a couple of years now, so it takes a bit of time to kind of develop to do the research on it. And so there's certainly some promising evidence that's going to be coming forward shortly. But we don't have enough. That's fairly apparent when you see what's happening. So there are a lot more than 400 people who are using drugs or who would benefit from a program like this. So one of the things that we would really like to see is a scaling up of Safer Supply and making it more universally available for people right now.
What are the obstacles to that? Do you need what are the obstacles to that? Do you need some kind of regulatory approval for something like that, or?
Well, right now, Safer Supply is dependent on an individual prescriber being interested in doing it, and there are a lot who are not interested in doing it. Okay. So if we were to shift it more to a general public health response, so that say the medical officer of health for the province would indicate that Safer Supply should become a provincial priority, and that it would become then accessible to anybody in Ontario who needs it, and it doesn't then rely on individual prescribers, being willing to work in a Safer Supply program. So I think that's one of the barriers to it, and another issue and a challenge that it has, which is the same challenge that opiate agonist treatment services have, is trying to match the power and the potency of the unregulated fentanyl supply. So, there's different drugs that are being prescribed to people on Safer Supply, but right now there's a very limited amount in Canada of people who are trying to match fentanyl. So we're interested in piloting a fentanyl Safer Supply program. But when you're using drugs that are not as strong as the drugs that people are used to, it's really hard to get them to shift into the regulated supply of drugs. Yeah. And so we find the same problem.
Not potent enough, Mr. Boyd, right? Not potent enough. Okay, one final question. Should all hard street drugs be either legalized or decriminalized?
Yeah, so I mean, decriminalization is really, it's a no-brainer. There's no reason why we should be criminalizing people for the personal possession of drugs. I think very few people would agree that that's going to be that has been a good solution to anything. When it comes to, I believe that we would certainly benefit from giving everybody access to regulated drugs, and so yes, I would support a legalization, but I think that sometimes people will automatically, when they hear legalization, leap to commercialization, because that's the models that we have, and we know that commercialization of drugs.
We're not going to have storefronts. We're not going to have storefronts. We're not going to have storefronts for fentanyl, right?
Yeah, but I think Safer Supply is a legalization framework for drugs. It's actually just providing people with access to a legalized prescription medication. So while people are on Safer Supply and they may be injecting their Safer Supply, it's legal what they're doing because it's under a prescription. So I think that we do need to look at the different drugs, and I think we probably need different regulatory frameworks for different drugs, and make decisions about how is the best way to intelligently regulate these drugs, so that if people are dependent on them or people need access to them, that we're not relying on the unregulated market, because we see now in the streets of Ottawa, we see the impact of an unregulated market, and it's terrible.
Thank you, Rob Boyd. Good to hear from you this morning.
Thank you.
Yep, from OASIS in the Sandy Hill Community Health Center. Your political fix after the news on City News.
Rogers TV presents a series of original creative stories animated by local authors for children of all ages. Join us for Ottawa Storytellers.
You see a lot of these luxury rental apartments that are coming out, and if you're a single person, it makes it extremely challenging to afford just basic lifestyle needs.
think our schools need better resources. Teachers need to be paid better. I think that there should be programs for Black people that prioritize our needs, and I think the curriculum needs to be adjusted to reflect all peoples, not just one kind of person. And they should also invest a lot of money in programs, after-school programs that are not like relevant in 1990, but are relevant today.
Do you have something to share? Let everyone know about your next meeting, your need for volunteers, or your fundraising event on the Rogers TV Community Billboard. Send us your words and we'll bring them to life on Rogers TV and rogerstv.com. When it's time to spread the word, go to rogerstv.com to add your announcement to the Community Billboard.
Join me for Season 3 of Paula Roy's Favorite Foods. Whew, that was a lot. I think I need a nap.
I need to know that my voice matters and feel like my opinion is going to have an impact on our society and our youth.
Number 1 for local news, traffic, and weather for Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News 1011 everywhere.
It's Wednesday, September 28th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, 13 degrees. In Smiths Falls, 12. And here's what's making news this hour. Two of the candidates for mayor in Ottawa have policy announcement this morning. In about an hour and a half, Catherine McKenney will have a significant announcement, according to their campaign. Mike McGuire also talking environment today and the plan should he be elected on October 24th. There is also a debate, the fourth in a series on the environment tonight. 5 of the candidates for mayor will face off. You can watch that on Rogers Television. It's scheduled to get underway at 7 o'clock. Sustained winds from Hurricane Ian topping 220 kilometers an hour. That has it on the verge of a Category 5 hurricane. After flattening tobacco crops in Cuba and knocking out power to the entire island, it is expected to hit the Gulf Coast of Florida this afternoon or this evening. In the aftermath of post-tropical storm Fiona, property owners in Newfoundland awaiting word about possible government assistance, both provincial and federal. They're left wondering if there will be enough to fill in the gaps that have been created by this storm. The Prime Minister and the Newfoundland Premier are both scheduled to tour some of the communities affected by the storm on the west coast of that province. OPP has sent out a list of when and when not to call 911 if you have a bear sighting. Among the times to call, when the bear appears aggressive or threatening. When not to call, if the bear is just checking out your garbage can or maybe moseying through your backyard. The full list of do's and don'ts on our website. City News Time 9:33. I'm Andrew Boyle. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Strong voice.
Strong opinions.
Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News.
1011 FM and 1310 AM.
Time for the political fix. Joining us today, Karl Belanger, President, Traxxion Strategies. Good morning, Karl.
Morning, Rob.
Ashton Arsenault, Vice President, Crestview Strategy. Good morning, Ashton.
Morning, Rob.
All right, Ashton. You said last week polls are for dogs, right?
I did.
Well, I don't know.
I stand by it.
You stand by it. These are pretty decent polls. There's another new poll out this morning I just saw from Ipsos, 35-30. Conservatives 35-30. Have yet to dig into the numbers. Main Street Research. Conservatives 41. 41, Ashton. Like, book the parade already. 41.
Oh, it's majority-ish.
Majority-ish, I should guess so. Measure the drapes already. Polyev is moving into Rideau Cottage. To 41, Liberals 33, NDP 12. 12. Okay, that's what you call an outlier. Angus Reid, because most of the polls have the NDP at 20. Angus Reid, 37-30, NDP at 20. People's Party, 1. People's Party at 1%. Okay? So Ashton thinks polls are for dogs. Karl, what do you think of these polls? We're starting to see a trend here, are we not?
It might be a bit early. I mean, there's certainly the honeymoon trend for Pierre Poilievre. He's a new leader. Okay. He's getting a bump. He's got a lot of positive coverage because he won so easily with none of the drama that we saw in the previous rounds for conservative leaders. So, a clear victory like that, hitting the ground running with a clear messaging, will give him a bit of a bump. When you look at the numbers, though, you start to wonder if it will indeed transform into more of a kind of blumentum as Poilievre goes along, or if it will cool down. That's the key, because we've seen this before. Opposition leader starts strong, and then people start to know them, and they get defined by the other parties, and things cool off. So we have to be very calm about these numbers.
Okay. Blumentum. I like that. Ashton, on the polls.
I must say, I also like Blumentum. I might steal that from you. The outlier is the NDP here, obviously, and I think that is a byproduct of sharing the government's backpack for the last few months. So they're really going to have to work to, present a vision for what an NDP government would look like at some point. We haven't seen that in a long time. Really, right now, I mean, their sole existence is helping the government pass legislation and periodically trying to dunk on people by saying, "Oh, but if this wasn't us in the background, this wouldn't have happened." And Canadians are just kind of like, "Okay, what do you stand for other than that?" Mm-hmm. But what I really want to draw attention to is the PPC number, and I've been forecasting this for a while. Guys are dead in the water. Canadians have finally realized that it's a big charade, and look, I'm happy about it. It's a racist, offensive party, and they can go the way of the dodo, as far as I'm concerned.
You think that's the way they're going?
That's the way they're going.
That's the way they're going.
I don't see them ever having a seat in the House of Commons, and I don't think they are in any way, shape, or form a viable alternative to any form of government party in this country. Period.
Okay. I'm curious about this PPC number too. You see the Conservatives at 37 and the PPC at 1. I just wonder, what does that mean? Because in the last election, we saw some polls, like Ecos polls, would have, the PPC at 7% or something like that, and then election day rolls around, they're nothing like 7%. So it seems they poll better, but then election day comes around, they don't turn out to vote. So that maybe does that make this 37 number suspect for me? That's one of the things that I would think about. But what do you think about Mad Max and the PPC now that Poilievre is conservative leader? Ashton seems to think it's going its extinct.
I don't think there is a PPC at this point.
There is no
PPC. It's a collection of misfits. I wish I had a more generous way to describe them, but the proof is in the pudding.
Okay, Karl.
Look at the last federal election.
Yeah, Karl. What does it mean for the PPC? Do you think all of this stuff?
Well, the first goal of Pierre Poilievre has always been, since he launched his leadership campaign, to repatriate all these lost souls that had wandered away with Maxime Bernier. And it is significant because in the last election, they got 5% of the vote against the Conservatives 33-34. So you cut that by half, you cut that by 80%, and suddenly the Conservatives are getting the numbers that they should get if those lost souls were voting the right way. And that's why Pierre Poilievre's messaging was first and foremost targeting these individuals. We saw him. That's why he was showing up at the convoy. That's why he was using some of the language, the gatekeepers, all that kind of conspiracy-ish language that is attractive to these voters. He wants to get them back to beat Trudeau, and these voters know now, after a couple of kicks at the can by Maxime and his party, that if they want to get rid of Trudeau, they can't keep voting for the PPC. So it's a very appealing call, and they're responding to it.
Okay. Any surprise in any of these top 5 issues? 3 of the top 5 are what I would call economic issues. I mean, you have cost of living inflation identified by 60%. Housing affordability, 27%, and then just the economy, which could mean anything, 21%. I mean, that's the number one issue right now for Canadians, is the state of the economy and what it means for their finances. Healthcare is always up there. Environment and climate change coming in third right now at 28%, but it's all over the news with the extreme weather events. But any takeaways from the top 5 issues according to this Angus Reid survey, Ashton?
No, and they'll be the top 5 issues the next time we go to the polls. Look, I had it pointed out to me yesterday that, and I'm feeling it in my own life. I mean, if you are paying, let's say, $2,000 a month on a mortgage and you are on a variable rate, and this is even going back 6 months ago, right? You're now paying at least $500 more, at least $600 more maybe, and like a lot of families just cannot cover that gap, and I think we are headed for a rude awakening. And you know, also, like I'm hearing behind the scenes that the Department of Finance isn't forecasting a recession and they're not planning to have one, but my goodness, there are going to be a lot of people in a really bad spot very quickly. And of course, this is going to bubble up to the surface, and this is what your politicians are going to have to care about, and they should care about it.
Okay. Karl, on the issues, any takeaways, any surprises there for you?
Not really, but it shows the extent to which people are hurting when 3 of the top 5 are related to the economy and affordability. And if you were to add them up, you'd be over 100%. I mean, cost of living, inflation are at 60%. Housing affordability, which is a different category, is at 27%. I mean, right there. It's clear that people are very concerned about that. But still, I mean, we're out of the pandemic. Healthcare being at the top, it's always at the top. But out of the pandemic, clearly people are very conscious that this is a problem. And as you mentioned, climate change is all over the news. Why? Well, because we see all these phenomena, and they keep coming, and they keep coming fast and furious, and they will keep coming. And you know, in as much as people's priority are with their pocketbooks, of course, because in the short term, you need to survive. You need to keep your head above the water.
Right.
At the end of the day, the long-term challenge, the biggest challenge, is climate change.
Okay. This past weekend, John Baird suggested on one of the Sunday political talk shows that the NDP is running an attack ad against Poilievre because Poilievre is, quote, eating them for lunch. Karl, how accurate is that?
Not very much so, except perhaps in the western provinces where the anti-liberal vote switched between the NDP and the Conservatives. It's a much stronger phenomenon there than it is elsewhere. I think Erin O'Toole had a better attempt at eating the NDP's lunch, going after blue-collar union-type voters. That said, the main reason the NDP is running an attack against Poilievre is because it makes the base feel good. They want the NDP to be the anti-conservative. So it's a reaction to that. It's not about propping up the Liberals. It's not about being their armed wing. It's really about showing up the base and being seen as the strong anti-conservative fighters.
Okay. Ashton, you and I talked a lot during the provincial election campaign about this sea change, this appeal from Team Ford Nation to reach out to at least the private sector unions and how they managed to forge an alliance there. You call it a game changer in Ontario politics. I'm just curious if Poilievre is going to be able to pull off the same kind of thing. But what do you think about this?
Yeah, I mean, a little bit apples and oranges, to be honest with you.
All right. Okay.
So I'm not ready to draw that line just yet. But you know, I would say there's a game script here. There's a template, and if you're a campaigner, which many of us are, you keep a notebook and you watch what works and you watch what doesn't. So I would not be surprised at all to see some of those, similar tropes and similar policies coming out of a Pierre Poilievre-led opposition and a future campaign platform. But what I would say, and I got to push back on Karl a little bit,
okay.
The NDP exists solely to prop up the government as it exists today. And you can never be a counterpoint to the Conservative Party of Canada when your sole existence is tied to propping up a government that Canadians do not want.
Okay.
Well, I mean, on that point, you could argue the Canadians don't want a conservative government either. I mean, at the end of the day, nobody's got a majority. So either you work with the card that you dealt with, and then you see how it falls out, and the electors and the voters will decide, or you pretend that there's somehow one party that is superior to the others. Now, the truth is that the NDP is facing a challenge in as much that they will wear whatever the Liberals do, negatively, and they may not get credit for anything the Liberal government does positively. That's the key challenge for the NDP. But, you know, we've seen these arrangements in the past. We've seen these talking points in the past from conservative analysts, and it didn't pan out because most people are reasonably looking at this and see, well, we want to get things done. We want results for people. We want to see help when there's trouble. And right now, they are getting some help thanks to the NDP, and we saw it with the announcement on dental care and inflation support just a couple of weeks ago.
Okay, we'll be right back.
Well, I've been called worse than an analyst.
Okay, we'll be right back, guys. We'll be right back. I want to talk about the carbon tax, climate change politics. When we come back, Rob Snow Show, your political fix. This is City News.
Join me next time on Simply Cooking by Chef, where I'm going to show you how to make a traditional pizza and even a gluten-free one, all from scratch.
Your mouth can do a lot of amazing things. And your mouth can save a life.
Hi, I'm Tom Wong. I'm just one of close to 1,000 Canadians in search of a stem cell match. We need your help.
A simple swab is all you need to register on the National Stem Cell Database. You could be the one to save a life. Find the hero in you.
Think it's okay to drive high? Think again. Drug-impaired driving is as illegal as drunk driving, and in Ontario, the penalties are the same. If police suspect you're driving under the influence of drugs of any kind, or a combination of drugs and alcohol, and you fail a roadside test, your license will be suspended immediately for up to 30 days. You'll pay a penalty of $198. And you can be charged with a criminal offense of impaired driving, the same as alcohol. Driving high is never okay.
$20. And Maggie, Mrs. Calabash, come into my kitchen. A quick mayonnaise, egg yolks, garlic, Dijon mustard, lemon juice, olive oil, immersion blender. Go down, come up. Voila, mayonnaise. Boom, 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 boom. $20. $20. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Sahai from The Wiggles, and this is my new book, Something in Common. Join me on an adventure as a camp counsellor helping some amazing children make friends and share what family means to them. I wrote this book with my friends at Children's Aid Foundation of Canada to help children who might feel lonely or like they don't belong. Not everyone has the same type of family, but we all have something in common. Download Something in Common for free.
October 5th, 2014, my daughter was hit by a train. She was walking along the sides of the tracks, and it shattered her world.
The world is changing.
So keep up with Rob.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
We're back with our political analysts, Karl, Belanger, Ashton, Arsenault, your political fix, part 2. So Poilievre makes no secret he is not a fan of the carbon tax, certainly wants to scrap it all together. The question is, does his party need some kind of comprehensive plan to fight climate change. Here we go again with the a third Conservative leader here. Where's your climate plan? Where's your climate plan? How do you expect Ashton Poilievre to respond to these questions? Where's your climate plan? Show us your climate plan. How's he going to handle that, do you think?
Yeah, look, I'll be honest with you. I think it's a fair question, right? I think we've passed the point where you can get elected in this country with a viable climate plan. But what I can say for certain is this: Dear Poilievre, unlike previous leaders, are not going to go back on their words with respect to certain things like carbon tax. So I think what you're going to see at the end of the day, if I'm looking into my crystal ball here a little bit,
okay,
I think you're going to see an overhaul of large emitter frameworks. I think you're going to see a lot more innovation. I think you're going to see a lot more adoption of nuclear technology. By the way, find me a credible environmentalist that wants to bring in nuclear technology. For whatever reason, I can't figure it out why they don't want it. But anyway, here we are. You look at the challenges that's happening in Europe. They cannot stand up coal facilities and gas plants fast enough to keep up with demand. Energy bills are tripling. There is an elegant solution to this, and it does not involve cutting off your nose to spite your face.
Okay, all right. Karl, how do you see Poilievre handling these calls for a comprehensive plan to fight climate change?
I think you will drop the word comprehensive and you'll get some kind of window dressing.
Okay.
I think that's what you'll get. The question for Poilievre is, does he want to win the election, or does he want to bring forward a plan that is the right thing to do for our future? I think his focus is on winning the election, and therefore the environment can be expendable to a certain extent. However,
because of those economic issues that you cited previously,
well, exactly,
the pocketbook
right?
issue. Yeah,
this is exactly the issue right now. People's top of mind. We just talked about this.
Yeah.
The environment is there, but it's not the main issue. And so it will all depend on what the ballot box question is. For some voters, it will remain, the environment will remain very important. For a lot of families and for a lot of people who are losing hope in the help they are not getting from the Trudeau government and the capacity of the government to change things, they will turn to another option. And right now, that alternative is Pierre Poilievre and the Conservative Party.
Okay, I want to tap in. Let's move along. We've talked a lot about Poilievre. I want to tap into that institutional knowledge of yours, Karl, while we have you on the line. We're getting closer and closer to Election Day in the province of Quebec. Advanced polls open, as a matter of fact. So we know what the outcome is going to be. All the polls suggest landslide victory for the CAQ.
Yeah.
But tell the Liberal Party of Quebec and the Parti Québécois have been the two dominant political parties for my entire life. 51 years old. I don't know how old you guys are. Probably around the same age. So here we go. These parties are not expected to perform very well on election night. What do you expect to happen? What are your expectations with, say, the Liberal Party? Why don't we start there and then we'll talk about the PQ, Karl?
Well, the Liberals struggled to get traction. Leader Dominique Anglade could not really connect with voters. She had a few challenges throughout the campaign to be heard. The reality is that it looks like the Liberals are going to be reduced to their strongholds of the Montreal West Island, and they are at risk of losing seats even here in the Outaouais, where in all it's a three-way race for a seat that has been Liberal for 61 of the last 65 years. Wow. And they're at risk of losing it in a three-way race. Pontiac seems to be safe. That said, the Liberal Party still has strong foundation. The problem they have is that they get almost no support amongst Francophone voters right now. Their lunch has been eaten by the CAQ to a larger extent, who has replaced them as the center-right mainstream party, and they're struggling to find space stuck between the CAQ and the Québec Solidaire newcomers who have eaten the PQ's lunch to a certain extent, right, and are seen as the brand new flavor and are hoping to replace both the PQ and the Liberals as the alternative, as the main opposition to the CAQ come Monday night.
So we shouldn't be surprised if come election night the official opposition is Solidaire then. That would be your expectation?
Yeah, as much as they're getting the support in downtown cores, and that's where they won, in Sherbrooke, in Quebec City, in Montreal, with pockets of support elsewhere. They are running a good campaign. They have a younger, new dynamic leader, or spokesperson as they call them, and he's run a good campaign. Now, the problem for QS is the PQ also has a young, dynamic new leader, and he was in single digit at the beginning of the campaign, and he's the only one who has increased significantly to reach the three other opposition parties in the mid-teens. So you have the CAQ in the 40, around 40, 35, 40, and then the four other parties are around 15%. So what's going to happen in a couple of days is hard to know, because the support is not spread the same way amongst the parties.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Just ask Duhaime of the Conservatives, right, in Quebec. They're doing really well in the polls. They might win one seat, his seat. So we'll see what happens. Anything to add there, Ashton?
Yeah, I mean, at the risk of triggering my fellow East Coasters, given the events of the past weekend, I've never seen such a perfect scenario for a party to prevail. It is a political riptide. All of the other parties except the CAQ are in the water, and the CAQ is on the beach waving to everybody. I mean, I've never seen a perfect cosmos of everybody polling the same except one party being so far ahead of all of the other ones. So I'm actually really interested to see what the final seat count's going to look like. I think Karl's right. I think Solidaire is probably going to be the official opposition, but even that's a little bit touch and go, so I don't know. But we're looking at a potentially historic blowout.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Okay. What do we have? 90 seconds. Let me ask you right now, if somebody stops you in the street and says, Ashton, who's going to be the next mayor of Ottawa? How would you answer?
Oh, gee. You caught me with my pants down here. Look, there is a lot of downtown area and core support for Catherine Kenney. I'm not particularly fond of her platform, but it is what it is. Probably Catherine McKenney, but I really hope it's not. I think if anybody has a chance, it's Mark Sutcliffe, but we'll see.
Okay. Karl, you paying attention to it at all, or?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah? Okay.
But it's really hard to know because there's no real data out there to inform us. So we have to rely on what we're being told. And what we know is McKenney is strong in the downtown core, and Sutcliffe is doing well in the suburbs. And that the question, it may fall down on will Charity split the vote? Or will Mark Sutcliffe be the one to get all that support to stop McKenney?
Right.
That's the key.
Yeah, I think the split is the key too. Yeah. Does the Chiarelli campaign siphon off enough of that more, say, moderate, centrist, center-right kind of stuff that Watson was good at to actually spoil it for Sutcliffe? I think that's kind of where we're at right now.
Well, I mean, I guess I would ask, is Chiarelli running a campaign? Where is Chiarelli?
Well, I don't know.
If he's running a campaign, it's one of the worst I've ever seen.
Okay.
Yeah, there's name recognition, though. He's got that going for it for him. But he's not running a super strong campaign. That's for sure.
Okay, thanks to the both of you. Greatly appreciated. Great stuff this week. Very interesting. Yeah, look at that. Touched on some federal politics, some provincial politics, even some city politics here in Ottawa. That's score and a fix. Carbon tax, climate change. After the news, it's the Talkback Hour. This is City News.
Focus better.
Partner better.
Sleep better.
Breathe better.
Love better. Work better. Friend better. Unwind better.
Everything gets better when you get active.
What are we doing about COVID? Seems like the communications have been all about how everything's opening up, and yet here in Ottawa we're experiencing our 7th wave, so a bit of a contradiction there.
I mean, one of the
the major issues I think that, especially walking around in the market area, is housing security for those who are not going to be able to benefit from all of the development that we're doing. So what is the city's response? How can we use some of the properties that we do have power to control and satisfy the needs for those who are housing insecure?
Here we go.
Hey, going back in, okay?
It's a new season of The New Fly Fisher on Rogers TV.
Hi, my name is Isabel. I'll be performing as part of Encore Ottawa 3. I hope you can tune in and catch it on Rogers TV.
Play 4 games of bingo from the comfort of your own home each Monday at 7 p.m. for your chance to win money from our $2,000 regular bingo or $5,000 super bingo night. Kiwanis TV Bingo Mondays at 7 p.m. on Rogers TV.
Is City News.
CIWW 1310 AM in Ottawa.
And CJET 1011 FM in Smiths Falls and the Valley. Number 1 for local news, traffic, and weather for Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News 1011 everywhere.
It's Wednesday, September 28th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, 13 degrees. In Smiths Falls, 12. Here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. Several policy announcements either coming today or already released from those wanting to win the Ottawa mayor's race. With a couple of those, here's City News reporter Chris Curries.
It's quite vague, but Catherine McKenney is making what they say is a significant policy announcement this morning at 11, at the same time as the reveal of Mike Maguire's environmental platform, which he says includes a reliance on nuclear power generation, a rethink of Ottawa's $57 billion energy evolution plan, and a rail service to be built for commuters between Orleans and Canada using the existing rails. His environmental platform comes as 5 candidates take part in the 4th and final eco debate tonight. That's at the Centertown United Church, where McKenney, Mark Sutcliffe, Bob Shirelli, Noor Kadri, and Brandon Bay will discuss environmental and climate justice themes. Now, voting day is on October 24th. Special advanced voting days are over, but there are still 2 chances to vote early on October 7th and 14th. Chris Curries, City News.
And also another policy today from candidate Mark Sutcliffe. Should he become mayor, he wants to make Ottawa an official music city. Sutcliffe says this includes reviewing current bylaws to make sure they enhance and support music. He would also create a music office, use city parks and community centers for events, and call various aspects of that industry together, developing a strategy to promote the city as a music destination. City News time at 10:02, and now your forecast. Here's meteorologist Jill Taylor.
We will gradually get out of this rather gloomy weather pattern, and it'll probably take all day into the evening to clear out, though. 14 for the high today. That's it. A brisk wind out of the north-northwest. Any showers through the morning won't last long. 4 degrees for the low. Cool overnight. Sun and cloud tomorrow and 13. For today, the high, 14.
And right now it's 13 degrees in Ottawa, 12 degrees in Smiths Falls. The U.S. National Hurricane Center says Ian has rapidly intensified off Florida's coast, the hurricane gaining top winds now of 250 kilometers an hour, just shy of the most dangerous Category 5 status. Reporter Gio Benitez is at the Tampa International Airport.
More than 1,900 flights have been canceled. Just about every airport in this region is either closed or facing issues, from Fort Myers, of course, to the East Coast in Melbourne. Miami International having a tough time this morning as well. Whether or not airports are open, some airlines like Southwest and United, they're preemptively canceling all flights today for airports in the storm zone, especially there in Fort Myers.
Now, Ian is pushing a storm surge that could cause catastrophic damage along the state's heavily populated Gulf Coast. Provincial police asking for help. They're trying to find a man wanted for breaching his release conditions. 44-year-old Adam Williams is white, 5'9", weighs 190 pounds. He has brown hair and brown eyes. Anyone who has contact with him is asked to contact police. We do have the full story up at ottawa.citynews.ca. Now, he is known to frequent places like Smiths Falls, Perth, and Ottawa, as well as other locations across southern Ontario. I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
It's time to talk back
on The Rob Snow Show.
Have your say and call now.
613-750-1310.
Is the carbon tax working? Climate change and the carbon tax. Is the Trudeau government's carbon tax an effective tool in the fight against climate change? How would you answer that question? Would you say yes? Rob, don't be silly. It creates an incentive to be more environmentally sustainable. It should not be free to pollute. That's the government's line. Or, no, we've had this carbon tax for years. Don't be silly, Rob. Climate change is as bad as it's ever been. Just look around and watch the news. Plus, it makes everything more expensive. Or, there's another option, I guess. Maybe the carbon tax would be more effective as a tool in the fight against climate change if the carbon tax was higher. And if the government didn't return most of the money back to taxpayers through its rebate program. Or maybe you have an entirely different opinion. I just want to know your opinion at 750-1310, 750-1310. 613-750-1310. Good morning, Brian. You're on City News. Brian?
Hey, Rob. I just want to correct the misconception that the government returns most of the money, because that's just not true.
Okay.
That's what the government is telling us, but it's not. You're getting paid back for the heating, fuel, or carbon, whatever you use.
Right.
But you're not getting that money back, okay, for the increased costs of food, clothing, building materials, drugs, everything we use, because those costs are being passed on to us. The manufacturers are not going to eat it. So it's costing us far more than we're getting back.
Right. So
And
this idea that the government is giving you more money than you pay in the carbon tax throughout the year, and now they've gone to these quarterly payments. You don't buy that.
It's totally deceitful.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Well, the government is sticking to that line. You can't shake it from that line. So, all right. Okay, Brian.
Grows longer.
Got you, Brian. Thank you. Okay. All right. Ian, Carleton Place. We're very popular in Carleton Place this morning. Is this an effective tool in the fight against climate change? The carbon tax.
Well, let me just run a story by you, and
All right.
a made-up one. But let's just say I have a family of 4. Let's say. And before all this nonsense started happening, let's say I could afford to, keep my kids at home with my partner at home watching them. But now, since everything is going up in price, I can't afford to do that anymore. So let's just say I need to get a second job.
Okay.
So at the very least, I'm going to have to go drive to said job, right? So that's additional fuel, additional car payments, whatever, right?
Whatever.
But let's say the prices keep going up, and now my partner has to get a job too.
Right.
So now we're going to have to buy another car, right?
Okay.
And my kids are now going to have to go to daycare. So there's an additional location.
But daycare be $10 a day. Yeah, daycare be $10 a day. Oh.
But you'll have to get them there because teleportation hasn't been invented yet.
Okay. What about the Carleton Place public transit system?
Oh, yeah.
Can't take the Carleton Place public transit system?
That's also non-existent, Rob.
Okay, all right. No, okay.
You have a good day, sir.
But I guess what I want to get at, well, look, we pay a carbon tax in this country. Now, the government doesn't call it a carbon tax, but it's a carbon tax, $50 a ton. Okay, fuel surcharge. Is it helping to fight climate change? It's supposed to help fight climate change.
Well,
is it working though? Is it working? Where's the evidence that it works?
No. I don't think there is any. No, all it's doing is pushing costs up and making people that are barely surviving as it is have to be more desperate. And let's just say, going on average income there, the only thing people are able to afford in terms of car wise is old beaters these days. And old beaters aren't exactly very good for the environment, are they?
Okay, yeah, gotcha. Okay, thank you, Ian.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Yeah, that's the question. Is it an effective tool in the fight against climate change? The carbon tax. Is it helping in the fight against climate change? Is it doing anything? Having any effect at all in preventing the worst effects of human-caused climate change? I think that's a totally fair question to ask. Because the default position used to be, if you want to get elected in this country, you must have a credible climate change plan. And your climate change plan isn't credible if it doesn't include a carbon tax. Now, I never thought that was true. But I think now a lot of people are starting to question the value of a carbon tax. That Canada even needs a carbon tax. I don't think it's just right-wingers. I'm keeping track of your answers this morning. Be very curious to hear your opinions on this today. Is the Trudeau government's carbon tax an effective tool in the fight against climate change? Russ in Kemptville, you're on City News. Russ.
Good morning, Rob. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you.
Good. No, the carbon tax has not been an effective tool. It's part of should be a comprehensive program to take care of it, but our greenhouse gas emissions have gone up except for 2019 and 2020, because that's COVID, so nobody was doing anything, so of course they went down. But I was just finishing up reading a book called False Alarm by Bjorn Lomborg. Have you heard of this book?
I've heard of him. I haven't read the book, but yeah.
So the book is obviously it's not climate change denying by any means. It says it's going to happen, but it goes at the alarmism that we see in the media about it, and how innovation is how we've always gotten through everything as a species, and how he thinks that we can innovate past everything that's going to happen. Okay. So he's looking at, by 2050, we're supposed to be 450 times more wealthy. And if we do innovation to tackle climate change, we're only going to be 430 times more wealthy. The programs we're putting in place now will cause us to only be 74 times more likely by 2050.
Wow.
So we are doing completely the wrong things for the long term, and we need to get our heads out of our butts and figure this out in a more effective way.
Okay. Thank you. Russ?
Thank you.
Kemptville? Yep. Okay. Is the carbon tax an effective tool in the fight against climate change? Good morning, Joanne. You're on City News. Joanne.
Good morning.
Hi.
I love your question. I'm glad you're asking it. There were many people who had this question and were looking for answers 20 years ago, 30 years ago, when all this was being proposed. No, it's not working. And where it seemingly works, let's face it, the price of gas went down this summer, and they said it's because consumption went down, demand went down. Why? Because the price of gas was so high, people stopped traveling. I do think that there are aspects of it that could curb behavior, but then you have to ask yourself about the opportunity cost. At what cost is it working? Well, it's at the cost of driving Canadians into poverty. All of us, except for the uber rich, for whom barely anything affects them. Personally, I just want to point out a crucial aspect of climate change. First of all, it's man-made climate change. That's what the expression that has been edited, and by editing man-made out of this, there are no bigger questions being asked. Is this something that is happening naturally in nature?
Yeah. I don't want to get into that. What I want to get into, this government won an election in part 7 years ago because it promised to put a price on carbon. Okay? British Columbia had a price on carbon long before this federal government did. A carbon tax. Where is the evidence that it works? As I say, my parents are on their 5th day without electricity. They pay this carbon tax. What has it done to help prevent the worst effects of whether it's man-made climate change, Joanne, or human-induced climate change, or whether it occurs naturally, whatever? I would like to know where is the evidence that this is effective as a public policy measure to prevent the worst effects of climate change. That's what I want to know.
Well, I think your question is timely.
Yeah,
I think it highlights the weakness of the entire policy and that in the end, the only thing that is going to help us, whether it's man-made or natural cycle, the only thing that will help us is human innovation.
Okay, thank you, Joanne. We'll be right back. Rob Snow Show, City News.
Hello, I'm Jim Deeks, host of Canada Files. I hope you'll join me each week for interesting and informative discussions with some of Canada's most impressive people.
I started playing softball when I was 4 years old. I loved it because it was all about having fun with my friends. And it still is.
From little kids to adults to seniors, softball is a sport for everyone. Join us.
Welcome to the traditional, ancestral, unceded territory of the Stalo people. The Stalo are people of the river. I'm so thankful for the courage and resiliency of our ancestors who lived on this land since time immemorial. Each of us have gifts from the Creator, and our Creator has a plan and purpose to be fulfilled in our territory. As we embrace our traditional teachings, we can lead the next generation into the fullness of what our Creator designed. Our shared history reveals a broken relationship. But as all Canadians commit to hear truth, acknowledge injustice, we can learn to walk in our traditional way, Letsamot, with a good heart and a good mind. Then all of our lives will be enriched. Kwasai.
Flooding is causing widespread devastation in Pakistan. More than 1,000 people have died. 1/3 of the country is underwater, and 6 million people are in need of emergency assistance. The humanitarian coalition is responding to the crisis in Pakistan. You can help. Donate today at together.ca, and your donation will be matched by the Canadian government. That's together.ca, the humanitarian coalition. Together, saving more lives.
The houseless crisis, because it really is a crisis down here on Rideau Street. There is not enough shelters for men especially, and we need to be helping our most vulnerable.
Every year, dozens of Canadians are killed or seriously injured because they take risks around railway tracks. Talk to your loved ones about rail safety. Visit stoptracktragedies.ca.
The phone lines are open at 613-750-1310.
Now, the Rob Snow Show continues.
Carbon tax. Is the Trudeau government's carbon tax an effective tool in the fight against climate change? Perfect time to get into this issue again for any number of reasons. I mean, first and foremost, there's what we're seeing in the news, on the news. I mean, it's not lost on me. I mean, we have family that are, directly impacted by this storm, Fiona, that has slammed into parts of Atlantic Canada. 5th day without electricity. The longest I've been without electricity is 3 days. I'll tell you what, after the 3rd day, you start going a little stir crazy. So my parents have had to throw out all their food. They mercifully have been relying on the, community cooperation, the generosity of neighbors. They have someone on their street who has a generator, and they've been kind of going up and down the street, and everybody gets an hour and a half with the generator, which, nice to do. And they're the lucky ones, okay? No damage to their house or anything like this. It's very similar to what people in Ottawa, across eastern Ontario, were going through when the Derico tore through here. And now we have all eyes on Florida, what Hurricane Ian's going to do to Florida. Okay, none of this is lost on me. The extreme weather element of this story, greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, warming the planet, more extreme weather events. All of this we know. We've heard this 1,000 times for the last 30 years. Okay? More wicked weather, more destruction. More dire warnings about the consequences of a warming world. More calls for action on the climate crisis, climate emergency. And then there are the politics and the politicians, and they're going at each other this week on carbon taxes. The Trudeau government doesn't call it a carbon tax, okay? Because tax is a dirty word. People hate paying taxes. So this government loves to play clever word games, right? They don't call it a carbon tax. They call it a price. Because that's not so bad, okay? We'll put a price on it. It's, as long as it's not a tax. And let's not call it carbon. Let's call it pollution. Because who wants it more? Who wants more pollution? Put up your hand if you want more pollution. Right? Nobody wants more pollution. Well, maybe Pierre Poilievre does because he thinks it should be free to pollute. Because he's like Mr. Burns from The Simpsons. So all of this is coming to a head in the House because the Conservatives have an opposition motion. It's very routine stuff, and it calls on the government to cancel any planned hikes to the carbon tax. Stop raising the carbon tax. Pierre Poilievre, as you know, vows to scrap the carbon tax. He made a speech yesterday in the House of Commons about the little miracles from Madahoki. Let's listen to that. Pierre Poilievre on Suntech tomatoes.
Let's start by talking about fried green tomatoes. The little miracles of Madahoki. Suntech tomatoes. A beautiful little tomato farm about 40 minutes south of here, in the heart of the great Carleton riding, where some entrepreneurial farmers opened a greenhouse to sell beautiful local produce to residents in the area.
They're delicious.
They are delicious, and they are legendary right across the region. Unfortunately, the farmers learned that the carbon tax the government applied would go on the CO2 that they release into the greenhouse. Now, of course, that CO2 is required to expand the growth and increase the produce that comes out of the greenhouse. This CO2 does not actually even go into the atmosphere. It goes into the plant life, something that the Liberals may have missed in grade 4 science class. But the reality is that it makes the tomatoes more expensive. So what is the consequence of the tax on these tomatoes? Well, it is at times more expensive to buy a Madahoki tomato in Madahoki than a Mexican tomato in Madahoki. Why? Because the taxes are lower in Mexico, even though the pollution...
Okay, so that was yesterday in the House of Commons, the little miracles from Madahoki. Always a good line. The little miracles from Madahoki. Lowell Green came up with that, by the way. He wrote that commercial for Suntech tomatoes way back in the day. The little miracles from Madahoki. But then you have the eco-radical, former top guy at Greenpeace, the not-so-lovable, not-so-huggable, totally committed climate warrior Stephen Guilbeault, Justin Trudeau's handpicked Minister of the Environment and Climate Change, and he took to his social media account yesterday and said, we must have a price on pollution, and if we canceled the carbon tax, you wouldn't get all that money back from the carbon tax rebates known as a climate action incentive because it's the best tax ever. Best tax ever. Okay? Because whatever you pay in carbon tax, you get it all back, and then some. And that Pierre Poilievre, the big meanie that he is, he wants to take that money away from you. So this is Stephen Guilbeault.
Today, Pierre Poilievre and his conservative politicians tried to stop carbon pricing in Canada. What does that mean? It means that families in Ontario that will be receiving this year checks of $700 for their climate rebate won't get it. It means that folks in Alberta, families in Alberta who would be getting $1,100 check this year won't get it. It also means that Pierre Poilievre wants to make pollution free for big polluters, polluting our air, polluting our water, and contributing to climate change. We don't think it's right. That's why we stood up to him. We said no. We think we can fight pollution, help Canadians with affordability. The Conservative Party and Pierre Poilievre have no plans to do either of those things. Today, Pierre Poilievre...
That's good. Thank you. Yeah, the price on pollution. Can't make it free to pollute. And what about all that money you get? To which I've always said, well, it was my money in the first place. Why don't you just let me keep it in the first place? So these are the political points that each side is trying to score. And in the meantime, what's all over the news? More scenes of storm-related devastation. Is the Trudeau government's carbon tax an effective tool in the fight against climate change? Jason in Stittsville, you're on City News. Jason.
Hey, buddy.
Hi.
Well, first of all, as to getting the money back, the Parliamentary Budget Office has already said that that's not true. That people in the provinces that so Ontario, I think Alberta, Saskatchewan, that would be worse off after the carbon tax.
By the year 2030. By the year 2030.
By the year 2030. And also, like your first caller said, it's passed on to us by the big corporate whatever, right? That gets passed down to us. And I don't know, Rob. Like, if the climate, if it's really 1 minute to midnight, even if it did work, even if it was reducing emissions in Canada, even if it was having an impact, like Canada produces 1.6% of total global emissions. You know, like why aren't they talking about sanctioning countries like China or India or the big polluters? You know, like even if we cut our carbon emissions in half, would it be effective? Right? Like,
okay. I'm trying to go a little bit beyond that. What I want to get at is will a carbon tax even achieve what it aims to achieve? Which is, say, cutting our greenhouse gases in half. Our goal is actually 40 to 45%, I believe, by the year 2030. That's our target, right?
In question period, I was listening yesterday, and one of the concerns brought up there's like this big LNG plant, I think it was in BC, and they're exempt from the carbon tax. So, I mean, they'd be one of the bigger polluters. It seems like, they say polluters must pay. Well, who are you talking about? Are you talking about us? Are we polluters for trying to heat our homes in wintertime?
Okay.
Does that make us a polluter? I mean, we live in Canada. Yeah, it's not a luxury to heat your home in January in Canada.
All right, Jason. Gotcha. Thank you. Let's take this one. Ray in Orleans. Ray.
Hello.
Yeah, hi, Ray. You're on City News, Ray.
Thank you for having me. A couple people stole my thunder there, but
there's always lots of thunder to go around. Right.
I run a landscape and fencing business, whatever, and with the increase in fuel and diesel for tractors,
right,
I've had to pass that on to my customers.
Sure.
When I just got a bill from a steel supplier yesterday, and for the first time I saw a fuel surcharge on it.
Fuel surcharge. That would be carbon tax, I suspect.
I don't know. Well, it said fuel surcharge, $35.
$35, okay.
The point is, the government is saying that, well, you get a rebate for your carbon tax. I think I might be in a different situation, but I guarantee you that I do not get a full rebate. And the average, homeowner, everything that they're buying and purchasing, such as in my case, fencing and railings, is more expensive, and snow removal is more expensive because we have to recoup the costs, the added costs of the fuel, the inputs to what we make that has been risen in price because of the fuel.
Yeah.
So to say that, you get, let's say the average person spends $1,000 a year in the carbon tax. Okay, well, you get $1,000 back.
Yeah.
But how many thousands did you spend in increased costs?
Yeah.
All the
I know we're kind of getting caught up on, what people are paying out, what people are getting back, and it's becoming kind of like a battle of the direct deposit from the government.
Gotcha.
What I want to get at is the goal of a carbon tax is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions to prevent the worst effects of climate change.
Yep.
That's the stated goal, right? Is it working?
Even if what the government is saying is true, let's say, okay, you pay the carbon tax, but you get it back. So how is that changing anyone's behavior?
Right.
Like they sit there and go, well, I'm not going to drive to Winnipeg for vacation now because I'll have to pay this tax. But, the government says I get it back.
Right.
Well, so people are going to keep doing the same stuff.
I'm going to get a check every 3 months now.
Yeah.
There's going to be a check from the government.
And like what the previous caller said about us being 1.6% of the world's emissions, let's say that climate change, man-made climate change, was a dam, and the dam has 100 holes in it. you know, and Canada represents 1 or 1.5 of those holes. And we're going to stand there with our thumb jammed in the dam while India and China, which represent about 75 of those holes, is actually busy making their holes bigger. Like, it's ridiculous.
All right, Ray. Thank you. Yeah, well said. Thank you. Back after the news. This is City News.
Hi guys, my name is Vi and I'm a part of Encore Ottawa 3. My set at the Meridian Theatre is coming out this week and I hope you tune in.
It's been 2 years later still. Rogers TV presents a series of original creative stories animated by local authors for children of all ages. Join us for Ottawa Storytellers.
One in 3 fatalities on our waterways is caused by impaired boating. Don't boat impaired.
I'm Julian Armour from Music and Beyond. Join us for a new show this spring on Rogers called Music and Beyond Presents.
You see a lot of these luxury rental apartments that are coming out, and if you're a single person, it makes it extremely challenging to afford just basic lifestyle needs.
Join me for Season 3 of Paula Roy's Favorite Foods. Whew, that was a lot. I think I need a nap.
For local news, traffic, and weather for Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News 101.1 everywhere.
It's Wednesday, September 28th. Good morning. I am Damilola Onime. Right now in Ottawa, it is 12 degrees. In Smith Falls, it is 13. And here's what's making news this hour. As Election Day draws closer for Ottawa's municipal race, mayoral candidates continue to announce what Ottawans can expect if they are elected to the top job in the city. Mike Maguire, in his environmental platform, which he is set to release in about a half an hour from now, includes relying on nuclear power and reconsidering the city's $57 billion energy evolution plan. Mark Sutcliffe, on the other hand, says if he is elected as mayor, he will ensure that Ottawa is the official music city. Sutcliffe's plan includes reviewing current bylaws to make sure they enhance and support music. We'll also hear from the mechanic camp with a policy announcement scheduled for 11 a.m. And the final echo debate in the lead up to the municipal election is tonight. 5 of the mayoral candidates, including Catherine McKenney, Mark Sutcliffe, and Bob Shirelli, will be in attendance at the debate. It starts at 7 p.m. at the United Church in Centertown. City News time is 10:32. I am Damilola Unime. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
It's time to talk back
On the Rob Snow Show.
Have your say and call now.
613-750-1310.
Carbon tax, climate change. All over the news. Is the Trudeau government's carbon tax an effective tool in the fight against climate change? Looking for answers to this question, you can say, it creates an incentive to be more environmentally sustainable. It can't be free to pollute. Or, no, we've had this carbon tax for years. Climate change is as bad as it's ever been, and it makes everything more expensive. Or you might think maybe the carbon tax would be more effective if it wasn't just $50 a ton. Maybe the carbon tax should be a lot higher than $50 a ton. I guess where is the evidence that it's working? That's what I want to get. Carbon tax started out at $10 a ton. Now it's $50 a ton. Didn't prevent the Coquihalla Highway in British Columbia from being torn in two, or the Derico from tearing apart eastern Ontario, or Fiona from destroying Port aux Basques. Maybe it's not high enough. Maybe it should be $170 a ton. Maybe we should accelerate that. It's not supposed to hit $170 a ton until the year 2030. Maybe that'll do the trick. I don't know. They're going to raise it up, though, to $170 a ton by the year 2030, after saying for years it would never go above $50 a ton, because $50 a ton was sort of like some magic number for fighting climate change. I guess not. Now it's $170 a ton. But let's get back to the phones here. 750-1310, one line available. It's the Talkback Hour. Kevin, on the Quebec side. Kevin.
Hey, good morning.
Hi, Kevin.
A lot of good points. I don't think it's effective because the incentives aren't there for consumers. You can't buy an electric car. It's a long waiting list, and it's too expensive, for one, or good ways to change over your, there's not enough incentive for consumers, but then the exemptions for the major polluters, the producers who really have the money to change, for them paying $330 million a year instead of the billions that gets cut off on exemptions, they don't have the incentive to do anything.
Yeah. Just on your point with electric cars, like let's take somebody who, say, lives in Glace Bay, Nova Scotia right now, Kevin. They're on their 5th day without power. And,
good luck, right?
And they have a Nissan Leaf. What are they supposed to do?
Well, you need to get...
Like they've been out with no power for 5 days.
No,
right?
you need 13 generators and your own fuel tank, giant fuel tank in your yard. Right. Yeah, no, it's impossible. They're screwed. So, no, the incentives aren't there to go along with this carbon tax. I'm not saying scrap it necessarily, but that liberal politician saying, "Oh, let's make polluter free for polluters to pollute." You're the one making it nearly free for them by having these exemptions.
Okay, thank you, Kevin.
Yep.
Okay, yeah, good call. All right, James, you're on City News. James.
Howdy.
Hi, James.
I just wanted to start off with the Pierre Poilievre clip you were doing with the tomato farm.
Little miracles in Madahoki.
Yeah. So they're saying that, or he's saying that the main cost for why our tomatoes are so expensive compared to Mexican tomatoes is because of the carbon tax and not because of having to build a greenhouse because we have winter, or the labor costs in Canada being basically like the workers here make.
Yeah, I'm not here to talk about tomatoes.
Yeah, in like one day versus what they make in a month. But anyway,
fair enough. Okay, yeah, okay, yeah.
That was just a little ridiculous. But on the carbon tax itself, obviously it's not going to stop a hurricane.
I guess what? Okay, James.
Yeah.
James.
Yeah.
Why does say Suntech tomatoes? Why should it have to pay a carbon tax?
For the carbon they're releasing. Like,
for the carbon they're releasing from a greenhouse
that the tomatoes are absorbing all this carbon, right?
Right.
And that they shouldn't have to pay for it because they're getting absorbed.
But what difference does it make?
Once those tomatoes are eaten, the carbon then gets breathed out by the person who ate the tomatoes and back into the atmosphere.
What difference
does it make? Rather than it coming from the atmosphere, they're releasing new carbon from another source.
What difference
so that's why there's a tax on it. Additional into the system.
Where's the evidence that it's made any difference to help in the reduction of greenhouse gases?
Well, if it's more expensive, then people will.
So it's not high enough.
As incentivized to release.
It's not high enough then.
Right. It will push for more fuel-efficient vehicles, more electric vehicles, less.
But why can't we? Why can't we just
taking bikes?
Well, we have governments that are mandating more efficient vehicles. We have governments that are saying you can't sell a car with an internal combustion engine by the year 2035 in some jurisdictions, right?
Exactly.
And if a carbon tax is so effective, why aren't they doing it in the United States?
They have their own
no, they don't.
For that, but
they don't have a carbon tax. They have a very left wing. They have a very left wing president. They have a very left wing president, and Joe Biden. Let's skip right over Donald Trump. Go back to Barack Obama. Okay, climate warrior Barack Obama. Where was his carbon tax? Did he have a carbon tax? The United States doesn't have a carbon tax under Joe Biden. Joe Biden just passed his environmental bill in the United States. Okay, universal praise from the environmental left for his bill on climate change. $370 billion U.S. over 10 years. $60 billion in grants and tax credits, clean energy investments to clean up pollution, real pollution in disadvantaged communities. $128 billion tax credits for renewable energy producers. $100 million for the purchase of special hurricane observing aircraft. Tens of billions of dollars in electric vehicle incentives, right? On and on and on it goes like that. 370 billion US dollars. And it's getting all kinds of praise. Landmark agreements, serious action, history making, all of these glowing reviews. Finally, someone in government gets it. But what it doesn't have is a carbon tax. Or a price on pollution, or whatever you want to call it. I'm not here to debate tomatoes. In this country, we have a liberal government that's been in power for 7 years, has missed every single target it has ever set for reducing greenhouse gas emissions. Even modest targets. Targets they used to slam when they were in opposition. The Harper government's targets. And it keeps telling us you can't fight climate change unless you have a carbon tax. Yet here we have a left-wing, liberal Democrat president of the United States. The environmental left can't say enough nice things about him for his bold action on climate change. Not a carbon tax to be found anywhere. Sean in Orleans, you're on City News. Sean.
Hey, Rob.
Hi.
How are you?
Good, thank you.
So I think to your last point, it basically says it all. If the stated goal is to meet Canadian targets via the use of a carbon tax, then it's not working, right?
Right.
I think there are a couple of other metrics that you can use. I mean, and again, I'm not trying to segue into a discussion about inflation. I'll get to my point. Is inflation is going on, which means that there is pent-up demand for limited supply, right?
Right.
So people still want stuff.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, there just isn't a lot of it, so the prices of everything are going up, right?
Yeah.
So that's yet another point to me that says, no, this isn't working. People aren't, just on the EV stuff, to me it all seems like a bit of a dog and pony show anyways. There's a lot of good information out there about how filthy dirty the extraction of the raw materials needed to produce these things actually is. We just do it in Africa, not here. I was walking over, I'm working at Ottawa U, and I was walking over the Lees overpass yesterday morning with my buddy. Okay. And we were actually talking about this, and we were saying, like, 20 years ago, and the Queensway was packed, there's not a plume of exhaust.
Right.
And
of smog, you mean? Yeah, we used to have all kinds of smog days. But,
right. These are all gas-powered vehicles. Many are hybrids. There would be a few EVs, I'm sure, in the pack. But there's no plumes of smog and exhaust coming out of these cars, So, I think what we need to do is, go in the right direction, but just let the government get the hell out of it.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah.
Have a nice day.
Let the innovation economy innovate. Okay. I think that's his point. Denise and Nepean.
Hello.
Denise. Hi, Denise.
Hi. Yes, I think it's absurd to think that they might have an effect from their so-called carbon plan.
Okay.
And I'll leave aside the absurdity of their tax and their argument that we get it back. The fact is, they didn't make any efforts, as you've identified, to actually meet the targets. You find a way to live in Barrhaven without a car, then you deserve the Nobel Prize. I mean, it just can't be done.
Okay. Why do you say that, Denise? What makes it so difficult to not have a car in Barrhaven?
Well, there's nothing I know because I've left Barrhaven.
Okay.
I'm handicapped.
Okay.
I live there.
Yeah.
Everything that I did, no, I didn't drive. Someone drove to me.
Right.
There were all these cars coming all day trying to get me things and help me with things because there was no other way to get to me. I once had a PSW who tried to use the bus, and she had to find another client because it was just too hard.
Okay.
And everyone knows those things. As I say, you've covered them on your show. But they just get forgotten. They get pushed aside when the higher-up governments want to talk about pollution. They don't talk about the fact that, we don't really have a bus system here in Ottawa. But if they fixed that, I bet you they would reduce pollution, because people would like to save money and people would like to save the planet. But the government built a world that doesn't accommodate that.
All right, Denise. Thank you. Thank you. They do love they love their cars in Barrhaven. More than half of the households in Barrhaven have 2 cars. That's how much they love their cars in Barrhaven. Let's take one more. Sharbet Lake. Kevin.
Good morning, Rob.
Yeah. Hi, Kevin. The carbon tax, is it an effective way to fight climate change, using a carbon tax?
Probably the worst way. It just affects the consumer mainly. And
Right. But who cares about the consumer? I mean, so what if people go broke? We have a planet to save.
Well, all the businesses, they have to pass it on to the consumer, and businesses are just going to start going to other countries like they have in the past because of the...
Well, there are lots of other countries. I mean, let them go.
Yeah.
We've got a planet to save, Kevin. Come on. 10 years to save the world, right?
All our
1 minute to
dollars.
midnight, Kevin.
It's all more expensive for the government to do anything because they have to pay for the carbon tax from all the people. They have to do the repave roads, build buildings. It just makes everything more expensive, where there's a better way to get the climate change action going, not just make everything more expensive for everybody.
Right. Obviously, I'm just playing devil's advocate here. How?
You're good at it.
What's a better way? What would be a better way, for example?
Well, they could have invested in infrastructure so people would have more confidence with electric vehicles,
Right.
That would be one step. Bike lanes is great, but, not everyone can afford a bike and the time to bike to work. If life was cheaper for everybody, maybe both parents wouldn't have to work.
Gotcha.
And people could get a better life-work balance.
Okay, good point, Kevin. Thank you, Kevin. Be right back. Yeah, you too. 750-1310. The carbon tax. This is City News.
I need to know that my voice matters and feel like my opinion is going to have an impact on our society and our youth.
Clubs, leagues, and courts in every province and territory across Canada, squash is the sport for wall-to-wall fun, fitness, and friendship. From coast to coast to coast. Learn to play, and you'll want to do it every day. Squash. Play inside the box.
On Thursday's Daytime Ottawa, we invite you to join us for a special edition of the show as we celebrate Truth and Reconciliation Day here at Rogers TV. Our guest will join us to share some powerful stories and, of course, remind us of why we should become allies with Indigenous people across Canada and, of course, around the world. They will share their Indigenous culture and some fabulous food, as well as some wonderful events you can partake in.
Wednesdays at 7:30 p.m., it's the RTV Quiz. Giovanni Petiti hosts a weekly trivia competition that lets you play from the comfort of your couch. Play along at home and challenge your friends. And don't forget to follow along on social media. Let us know who's top of trivia, and you can find yourself featured on a future episode.
Are you kidding me, folks?
The RTV Quiz, Wednesday nights at 7:30 p.m. on Rogers TV or at rogerstv.com/RTV Quiz.
Enjoy the fresh outdoors. Play an important role in the lives of school-age children. Get paid to make a difference in your community. Become a crossing guard. We are currently recruiting crossing guards for the school year. We offer a competitive wage with various perks and opportunities for bonuses. Join the Ottawa Safety Council in keeping kids safe in the nation's capital. Find out more at crossing-guard.ca.
Join me next time on Simply Cooking by Chef, where I'm going to show you how to make a traditional pizza and even a gluten-free one, all from scratch.
Hello. On the Rob Snow Show. The phone lines are open at 613-750-1310.
Now, the Rob Snow Show continues.
About 10 minutes left here to take some calls during the talkback hour. We're talking about carbon taxes, climate change, hot issue this week. We have an opposition motion in the House this week. The Conservatives calling on the government to stop raising the carbon tax, what the government calls the price on pollution, and the Liberals firing back saying Pierre Poilievre wants it to be free to pollute. And what about all those rebate checks that you get from paying the carbon tax? My question is it an effective tool as a public policy tool in the fight against climate change if the goal is to reduce greenhouse gases? Is it working? And I think that's a fair question. Steve in Ottawa. Steve.
Hey, Rob. How are you?
I'm Steve. I'm good. Thank you, sir. Go ahead. What do you think?
So yeah, I don't think the carbon tax is effective. In fact, I think it's racist and discriminatory against the young.
Against the young. Okay.
Many new Canadians, when they come to Canada, can't afford to buy a house in the Glebe, so they have to buy a house in like Russell or Arnprior or outside the city where there's no way to commute, so they have to drive in, right? So these people who can't afford to live in the city are paying more to actually work in the city.
Right. Drive till you qualify. They call it drive till you qualify.
Yeah, well.
Yeah.
The other thing, I think what no one's really talking about is, okay, let's say there's 50% electric cars on the road and 50% gas cars on the road. Gas is based on supply and demand. Now, if there was like half the demand there is now, the gas price would be really cheap, but they're inflating it with this carbon tax, so almost forcing you to buy an electric car. You know what I mean? They're not. It's like they're inflating the price with the carbon tax because if it was based on supply and demand alone, the gas price would be half what it is now because half the people will be half the demand, right?
Okay, I'll have to give that one some thought, Steve. We have lines available here. Chris in Brockville. Chris, you're on City News. Chris.
Good morning, Rob. Thanks for taking my call.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I don't agree with the carbon tax whatsoever at all.
All right.
I think Pierre hits a good point with how it raises the cost of things, and like it makes people buy, to me, imported goods, which come to Canada by ship, by truck. So in actual fact, you're creating more carbon into the economy by making people buy lower priced goods that come in from outside the country. So why not promote a local place like
you know, there's even a term for that. You know what they call that? They call that carbon leakage.
Yeah.
That you know, if your environmental regulations become too strict, exactly what you're saying. People
why not promote a business like Madahoki tomatoes and then get people to buy local. You support local versus getting everything shipped in and supporting other economies. And
so the next thing is going to be the next thing is going to be because of carbon leakage. What they're thinking about is having carbon tariffs. So something like that doesn't happen.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think it's a good discussion point, Peter.
Okay.
So
all right. Thank you.
Thanks, Rob.
Yep. Just on. Okay, we have some calls. May as well take. Let's take. Oh, John is on the line. John, you're on City News. Hi, John.
Hi.
Yeah. Hi, John. Carbon tax. Yeah.
I wish I could say I saw it in person, but I only saw it in a photograph. A gasoline truck pulling a diesel generator, charging an electric car because the guy ran out of juice before he got to a charging station.
Okay.
That says it all.
You've seen it with your own two eyes, have you, John?
No, I haven't yet.
Oh, you haven't yet, but you think...
I've seen a photo of it.
Oh, you've seen a photo of it. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
All right. Good to hear from you, John. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Thank you.
Yeah. He's on the road. I think Paul in Canada. Paul?
Yeah, hi, Rob.
Hi, Paul.
Just calling in, comment on your question about whether the carbon tax is effective. And I actually think it's going to turn out not to be. And what I see as the main problem, and I'm just speaking from a consumer point of view, is the uptake of electric cars, the uptake of changing home heating over to electric and all that stuff, which I think is the goal. It kind of implies that you're well enough off that you can actually do these things. And I think surely not everybody's got whatever it would take to do that, $30,000 or $40,000 sitting in a bank account, just waiting to go ahead and do this stuff. And so I believe the uptake's going to be much less than what they're hoping for, just because of that.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. Look, thanks for all those calls. I just want to give you, the parliamentary budget officer, Yves Giroux, is not a political person. He's just a numbers person. He's what they call a watchdog, right? The PBO. Back in 2019, Mr. Giroux and his team analyzed the carbon tax at $50 a ton. And at that time, his finding was that the carbon tax would cost a typical middle-class family in Ontario about $600 a year, roughly. And it goes on a sliding scale. Higher income households typically pay more in carbon tax, bigger houses, more vehicles, these kinds of things. Lower income households pay less, but a typical family, $600 a year. But then there are the rebates, right? You pay the tax, you get the rebate, and the PBO crunched those numbers and said in 2019, most people will come out ahead at $50 a ton. You're not going to get rich off the rebates, but you will come out ahead. And the average household, that typical household, middle-class household, would come out ahead at the end of the year by a whopping total of $56 for the entire year. Okay? The rich would pay more, a $200 extra a year. They wouldn't get anything back. But they're rich, so who cares about them? But later on, the PBO released another report and looked out further, longer time horizon, out to the year 2030. And it used the Liberal government's $170 a ton carbon tax figure. And that's when the picture changes. And that's when the PBO splashes cold water on this idea that most households in Ontario will see more money back than they ever pay in carbon tax. That will remain true for the lowest income households. The first quintile, the lowest income households. There are 5 quintiles. That's why they're called quintiles. According to the PBO, these are numbers that just came out in March. We interviewed Yves Giroux at the time. The household in the lowest 2 quintiles will get more money back than what they pay in carbon tax for the next 3 years. But by the 4th year, only the lowest income households will ever get more back in rebates than they ever pay in carbon tax. Everyone else will lose money on this carbon tax. And in Ontario, when this carbon tax is $170 a ton, the typical average middle-class household in Ontario, you will collect $1,814 in rebates from the government, but you will have paid throughout the course of the year $3,275, which is a net cost to you of $1,461 for the year, or another $121 a month. But you'll be saving the planet, so good for you. This is the Rob Snow Show on City News.
October 5th, 2014, my daughter was hit by a train. She was walking along the sides of the tracks, and it shattered her world.
Focus better.
Partner better.
Sleep better.
Breathe better.
Love better. Work better. Friend better. Unwind better.
Everything gets better when you get active.
more of a push for Indigenous languages being heard, seen, whether it's in the media or just on signs on the road. Culture and language is such an important piece to reconciliation, and I feel like that's the goal that I want to see. So just more Indigenous languages being lifted and promoted and encouraged and spoken and just heard.
$20. Hi, I'm Maggie. Come into my kitchen. When you're using salt in a recipe, check for saltiness. Not all salts are equal. A fine grain salt is a lot more salty than a large grain salt because that takes longer to get into the food. Bum, 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 bum. $20. $20.
What are we doing about COVID? Seems like the communications have been all about how everything's opening up, and yet here in Ottawa we're experiencing our 7th wave, so a bit of a contradiction there.
Hi, my name is Isabel. I'll be performing as part of Encore Ottawa 3. I hope you can tune in and catch it on Rogers TV.
Number 1 for local news, traffic, and weather for Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News 1011 everywhere.
It's Wednesday, September 28th. Good morning. I am Damilola Unime. Right now, it is 12 degrees in Ottawa and 13 in Smiths Falls. And here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. The Ottawa Student Transportation Authority is still looking to find solutions for hundreds of students who do not have a way to or from their school.
We still do not have enough school bus drivers. We're in better shape than last year. Okay. That is the good news. But we still have about 500 students who still don't have transportation.
Vicky Kariako is the Chief Administrative Officer for the Ottawa Student Transportation Authority and tells City News they are still seeing some coverage issues, short-term delays and cancellations. Those are generally due to drivers getting sick, and OSTA is without any replacement. OSTA's Yellow Bus Driver Recruitment Campaign is ongoing. You've been asked to be on the lookout for a federal offender wanted for breaching conditions of his statutory release. The Repeat Offender Parole Enforcement Squad describes Adam Williams as 5'9" tall, about 190 pounds, and has brown hair and brown eyes. He is known to frequent Ottawa, Smiths Falls, Perth, and some southern Ontario cities. Anyone with information of his whereabouts is asked to contact police. His picture is at our website, ottawa.citynews.ca. With the weather forecast for Ottawa and the Valley, here is City News meteorologist Joe Taylor.
We will gradually get out of this rather gloomy weather pattern, and it'll probably take all day into the evening to clear out, though. 14 for the high today. That's it. A brisk wind out of the north-northwest. Any showers through the morning won't last long. 4 degrees for the low. Cool overnight. Sun and cloud tomorrow and 13. For today, the high, 14.
City News time is 11:02. Hurricane Ian has intensified as it nears landfall along Florida's southwest coast with top winds of 250 kilometers per hour. Ian is just shy of the most dangerous Category 5 status. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis says it is too late for people to evacuate now.
It's no longer possible to safely evacuate. It's time to hunker down and prepare for this storm. This is a powerful storm that should be treated like you would treat if a tornado was approaching your home.
The massive storm is on track to slam ashore somewhere north of Fort Myers and south of Tampa, sparing the Bay Area from a direct hit from the hurricane. And Defense Minister Anita Anand says about 600 military members are working in Atlantic Canada to help with recovery efforts following post-tropical storm Fiona. Speaking at a news conference in Ottawa this morning, Anand said the Canadian Armed Forces presence in the region is steadily increasing.
CAV personnel continue to operate under very challenging circumstances. This includes reserve force personnel, including Canadian Rangers, whose own communities have been affected, standing shoulder to shoulder to help their neighbors in need.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is in Port au Basque, Newfoundland today after surveying the storm damage in Nova Scotia and PEI yesterday. It all started 50 years ago on September 28th, 1972 at 99 Queen Street East in Toronto. City TV launched on local television and they have been doing it their way since then.
From the iconic voice of the late Mark Daly.
This is Toronto Television, Channel 57, Cable 7. City TV, everywhere.
To hitting the streets in the 80s for late great movies.
My name is Rubble from Scarborough, so listen to me. We got late great movies from City TV.
And you can't forget about Speaker's Corner.
Speaker's Corner, Speaker's Corner. Go ahead and try your luck. Yeah, Speaker's Corner.
Yeah, that was the Bare Naked Ladies, and they weren't the only musicians popping into the small street booth. Weird Al also visited.
They took everything away from me, but they couldn't take Speaker's Corner away from me, and I want to hear Al music. Al music.
Be sure to check out the hashtag CityTV50 for more great memories from all your favorite City TV personalities, past and present. Eva Fragiscatos, City News.
I am Damilola Unime, and for news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Firm.
Fair.
Fun.
The Rob Snow Show returns
On Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM.
and 1310 AM.
Heave hi, oh, the best man in Ottawa was Mapara Joe. Big Joe Mapara paddled into Mattawa all the way from Ottawa in just one day. Hey, on the river Ottawa, the best man we ever saw was Big Joe Mapara, the old folks say. Come and listen and I'll tell you what the old folks say. And he say Big Joe had an old pet frog, bigger than a horse, and he barked like a dog. And the only thing quicker than a train upon a track was Big Joe riding on the bullfrog's back. Heave hi, ho, the best man in Ottawa was Mapara Joe. And he say
Time
Big
for
Joe
Valley
just
View.
get
Bruce McIntyre's back with us,
timber and working up a sweat.
our award-winning correspondent with the Eganville Leader. How are you this morning?
Well, Rob, in a word, dry. I'm very happy I'm dry.
You're dry. Well, that's good.
Raining.
Lots of rain. That's for sure. I'm just going through your newspaper. The Eganville Leader is out today. And Bruce has provided me with my weekly electronic copy, and I thank you so much. You say that one of the popular segments in the Eganville Leader is Reflections of a Century, and it goes 100 years ago, 50 years ago, and 75 years ago, 25 years ago. Really interesting. Local municipalities agree on governance model, it says. This is 25 years ago, this week, 1997, September 23rd. At a meeting last Wednesday night in Grattan Township, representatives from that township, the townships of Sebastopol, am I saying that right?
Sebastopol, yeah.
Yep. South Algona and the village of Eganville agreed that a new council will be made up of 6 representatives, a mayor and reeve elected at large from the 4 municipalities, and 1 councillor from each of the present municipalities. The model must officially be approved by each of the municipalities in the study area, but the restructuring committee does not expect any opposition. So I'm guessing that went ahead, did it, in 1997?
I don't think so.
Don't think so? Maybe there was some opposition, I wonder.
I'm just looking at the word because out of that group you mentioned, Grattan, some of them became North Algona, and some of them became Bonaire Valley.
Interesting.
There's two separate townships, and they've been arguing now the last 10 years. They should unite those 2 townships and put them together. Why they're ever separated is unknown to us. But again, Rob, the province had the final say. That was during the wild days of amalgamation.
Those were wild days. Yeah, those were wild days. And then there's another one here, 25 years ago. Many accolades passed out at Bridge's official opening, Eganville's new $600,000 downtown bridge was officially opened last Tuesday with a ribbon-cutting ceremony and a promise that it should last another 40 or 50 years. So that was 25 years ago. How's that bridge looking? Did it last?
It's looking like a heck of a bargain for $600,000. Today it'd be $600,000.
$600,000, yeah. $600,000, yeah, 25 years ago.
that bridge actually had some work done on it about 4 years ago, upgrades the whole 41 section and the bridge, and that is the link. If that bridge ever goes, which it won't, but someday it may go, it would just cripple Eganville because that unites the two sides of the north and the south over the river, and we keep, in the old days, the Catholics were on one side and the Protestants were on the other.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, that's how the town was built.
Wow.
But it's a good bridge, and I've got no complaints. Beautiful flower pots. So
a deal at $600,000. A deal.
You can't even get a study done for $600,000.
No, you probably couldn't. You probably couldn't even get a study done, let alone build the bridge. Okay.
Yeah.
So, municipal elections. What's the buzz in the valley on municipal elections?
Well, it's buzzed and debuzzed. Pembroke got debuzzed. The all candidates meeting scheduled for Festival Hall has been canceled due to the painting of Festival Hall. They're under negotiations to get it repainted. So the pictures coming in and the politicians are going out.
That's hilarious.
We shouldn't laugh. Come on. But anyway, it was supposed to be held on October 3rd, and they're not going to hold it there. And it's just too scattered and too complicated to try to find another venue that's suitable for that many candidates getting their 2 minutes of glory up on the stage. So they're just going to cancel it. Eganville has theirs tonight, Bournemouth Valley.
All right.
That would be interesting. And Redford is next week. And the big issue coming out of Madahoki Valley, Barry's Bay, Killaloe, is affordable housing. That's growing as a big, big item that every elected official is talking about now, yeah.
Affordable housing.
It's something I haven't really paid attention to, but as I see the highway getting closer to us and the bridge already constructed, it's like, wow, where are people going to live? Redford, I mean, they're all having their own housing crisis, and it's going to get even worse. It's going to be scary.
Okay. All right. Tell me about this story. County Road 512. I don't know if I've ever even been on that road, but it's in the newspaper.
You would know. It's like it's a mini Italian road going through the mountains. It's pretty curvy.
Okay.
And,
all right.
It is the link. It is a vital link for the logging trucks, especially. They come barreling down the hill from Foymount, and which is the highest point in Ontario, just for your trivia. And that's where the base was.
Sure. Yeah, the base. Yeah.
And so they come whipping down that hill, and 512, and it goes right through Eganville up to Foymount, Brudenell and on, and it's 3 years ago the county said, yep, we're going ahead, we're going to get that done for you. 2 years ago, well, we can't get it done this year, we're going to do it next year. This year, well, we had to have utilities had to be moved to accommodate the new road, but the utilities won't be completed until next year. So come on back next year, we'll get it done again. And Mayor Murphy is on she's a little cranky about this because that was her crowning glory when she left the chair as the warden of Renfrew County. She was able to get that bridge secured, that road secured to get done. And now, going on 3 years later, it's not getting done, and she's pretty cranky. But it's a good election issue for her. She can rally her votes around that. So we'll see what happens. But, it's a blow, especially for one of the largest employers in the area, Heidelman Lumber is there, and that is their front door is that road, and it's just terrible.
It's a vital artery for them then.
Yeah, it really is.
Right. Yeah, okay. So, again, Bruce McIntyre is with us for Valley View. He's with the Eganville Leader, which is a weekly. It's Renfrew County's largest paid circulation newspaper. It's been independently owned since 1902. Can you imagine? Here we are, 2022. You do the math. Out now, $3. $3 if you see it in the store, if you're up that way. Now, one of the economic indicators, leading economic indicators for the health of the economy is building permits. Yes, you can build that house. Yes, you can build that apartment building.
You can build that RV.
What's happening with building permits in Eganville?
Well, they're not flying off the desk too quickly at the chief building official's office. He reported to his town council that June and July had about 12 or 14 permits issued per month, and the month of August saw 5. And that's not a
building
good
permits. Wow. Okay.
And that may not be for new buildings. It may be just an extension of a garage, or maybe a new house, or maybe another RV at Lake Clear. But the point is, I gotta stop saying that. The point is, there's not a lot of building going on, and that's not a good sign. I mean, one thing I always look for when I drive to Ottawa myself, I count cranes. How many cranes are up there in Ottawa? That to me is a sign of a good economy.
Yeah.
We only had one. So that's something that's the issue for the election coming up as well. How do we get more growth in our township? Yeah, it ain't happening now.
This is interesting. Ordering windows, you're waiting 27 weeks. Wow.
Yeah. That's not their fault. I mean, that's just a contract.
No,
that's the reality.
Yeah. 27 weeks. Holy smokes. Okay. What else do we have in the newspaper here? Oh, yes. There's a big write-up, actually, in one of the other newspapers about what is the province going to do now that, we've had this inquest into the 3 murdered Ottawa Valley women, the victims of Basil Barutsky.
Yeah.
Waited a long time for that to happen. 7 years, right? 7 years.
Yeah.
And you call the Attorney General, you call the minister in charge. Are you going to enact, any of these recommendations? Where's your action plan? What are you going to do? Nobody's talking. Nobody's doing anything at the provincial
He was asked
level.
that question. The AG was here last week at Barry's Bay for the unveiling of a monument in honor of the 3 women on the day, the anniversary, the 7th year of their murders. And the AG was here along with the Minister of Women and Economic Development and our own MPV, John Yakubowski. And the MC of the event, I was speaking to her yesterday, Roberta, she asked the Premier, so how are those recommendations coming? And Kim Mercer, who was the lawyer for the Renfrew County Sexual Assault Clinic. And
that's right. Yeah, she was on our show many times.
Yeah, she asked the same question and said, well, we're still waiting. And all 3 politicians said, yes, we're working on it. We're working hard. There's going to be action. I think, honestly, Rob, they were very sincere. They were sincere in what they were saying. It wasn't a ruse, but these things take time, which to you and I, we roll our eyes. But if you're a victim or an advocate, it's an eternity waiting for this to get done. So we'll wait and see. The number one thing they want done is to have femicide declared an epidemic, because from the time when the inquest was held, from that point in the end of June until last week when the monument was presented, 34 women died in that time period of domestic abuse.
Wow, okay.
I mean, it's just horrible numbers. It really is. But it was a beautiful event. Another monument was laid in the women, and it was just a good opportunity for the community to come together to remember the wonderful attributes of the 3 ladies and to hope that something is done quicker rather than later.
Okay.
Well, one thing I noticed, Rob,
yes.
is have you ever looked at the bottom of our editorial page, the very bottom? It's on page 7.
I probably have. I don't have it in front of me right now, though.
Sorry. Yeah. The Lord's Prayer is on there every
Oh,
week.
really? Okay.
Yeah, it's something you need to have a community paper. I just noticed that now.
Oh, yeah, there I see it, yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
You don't see that in the Ottawa Citizen. So.
No, and right next to it says, we acknowledge the financial support of the Government of Canada. So there you go.
Yes, we're one of those media that's the far left liberal paper that we are. We take government money and we're in their pockets, so that's wonderful. That's the criticism of the program, but you know what? It's one of the good programs. It really is. It's local newspapers are dear and near to any small community, and once it's gone, it's not coming back.
I thought the Government of Canada was sponsoring the Lord's Prayer. You confused me.
Oh, I see what you mean. Yes, well, that too. I mean, our leader walks on. I mean, the PM walks on water. We all know that. So I mean, right. It goes without saying.
Look, I don't know where Legion Field is, but don't take your horse there.
Do not take your horses. Don't take your horses, people. I thought I put the zingers in for you today. Legion Field is a huge field located on the north part of Eganville, and it's for soccer, outdoor events. Right. But I guess people are going through their horses and their dogs and not cleaning them up after themselves. And boy, it's one thing you don't like cleaning up is horse poop. I see it all the time on the back roads from the Mennonites when they're going through, and it's like dodgeball trying to get through there. I can only imagine on Lincoln Field when it gets all wet. So please keep your horses off the field.
Okay. All right. Interesting newspaper this week. If you want to know anything that's going on for the council seat races in Renfrew, there are profiles of all the candidates in the newspaper this week, and all kinds of Ottawa Valley news, including a profile of the race for mayor in Whitewater region. So
that is going to be an interesting one. You have one who is a diehard Ontario landowners personality, Donna Burns, very, very astute, smart woman, has a good legal expertise, and she's up against one of the incumbents from the council. So that is going to be a real race to watch.
All right. Thank you, Bruce McIntyre.
Thank you, Rob.
We'll speak soon. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Yep, from the Eganville Leader. This is the Rob Snow Show on City News.
Play 4 games of bingo from the comfort of your own home each Monday at 7 p.m. for your chance to win money from our $2,000 regular bingo or $5,000 super bingo night. Kiwanis TV Bingo Mondays at 7 p.m. on Rogers TV.
Sometimes, for a wish to come true, it takes a kingdom, because together is stronger. Tied tight, united we stand, in honor of one child's wish, to fuel the fire that will grant many more. Join the kingdom.
I'm not special. Cancer happens to people all the time. I take 1 mile at a time, 26 miles a day. I want to set an example that'll never be forgotten. Sometimes, it feels endless. But the pain I feel is nothing. I've seen little kids in so much pain. Somewhere, the hurting must stop.
Carrie Fox ran more than halfway across Canada to raise money for cancer research. Every year, millions of people around the world continue the marathon of hope in his name.
Hi, I'm Sahai from The Wiggles, and this is my new book, Something in Common. Join me on an adventure as a camp counselor helping some amazing children make friends and share what family means to them. I wrote this book with my friends at Children's Aid Foundation of Canada to help children who might feel lonely or like they don't belong. Not everyone has the same type of family, but we all have something in common. Download Something in Common for free.
Hello, I'm Jim Deeks, host of Canada Files. I hope you'll join me each week for interesting and informative discussions with some of Canada's most impressive people.
The houseless crisis, because it really is a crisis down here on Rideau Street. There is not enough shelters for men especially, and we need to be helping our most vulnerable.
Pillar of community opinion.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM
and 1310 AM.
National Day for Truth and Reconciliation is Friday. And joining us now is Raeanna Whiteduck, Cultural Ambassador, Madahoki Farms Indigenous Experiences. Good morning.
Great, Shabbat. Miigwech so much for having me here.
No, it's nice to hear from you. How do you say that? Is it Madahoki? Am I saying that right? Close?
No, that's okay. We get that
Yep.
issue all the time. It's Madahoki, which actually means to share the land.
It means what? Sorry?
To share the land.
To share the land. Okay, I like that.
Yeah, so
Madahoki
it's very
Farms.
fitting that we get to share that day of National Day of Truth and Reconciliation.
And what is happening at that location on Friday?
Oh, man. So Friday, which is the day that honors the children who returned home and the survivors of residential schools, it's very fitting that, and we're going to be having a reconciliation dinner. So we have 75 tickets that we are selling to the general public, and each time one of those tickets is bought, it will sponsor a dinner for a residential school survivor to come and have a meal. So that's kind of the kickoff to our Tugwagi or our fall festival. We have our in-house chef, Trudy Metcalf-Coe, who will be our culinary chef. Who is our culinary chef, and our main dish is going to be served is elk. So there's lots of savory meals. There's going to be the beginning and the kickoff to our interactive artist stations for our Tugwagi Fall Festival. There's going to be opportunity to shop with local Indigenous in the local Indigenous market. We have live cultural performances. there's an opportunity for the general and public to meet our rare and endangered Ojibwe spirit horses, to hear the stories of their survival from the spirit horse and where they came from, as well as accompanied by different paintings created by Rhonda Snow. There's also, this is the big one as well, is visit our reconciliation and rock station. So we're encouraging people from the general public to come and leave a message on our legacy trail. So they'll write messages of hope or reconciliation, and then we encourage everybody to go and leave that on our legacy trail. There's also, it's a fun and family fun event. There is farm play and barnyard animals. There's also going to be, and this is a big one for us, is Every Child Matters powwow. So September 30th is a big day, right? So it's an opportunity where we get to include non-Indigenous people to come and celebrate with us as well.
Okay, so the Every Child Matters powwow. I was at the powwow this summer in Kittaganzibi. I'd never been to a powwow before.
Then you were in my home.
It was quite an event, let me tell you. So will you have everybody in the regalia and everything again?
I love so much that you use that word. That's the appropriate word. Yeah. Absolutely. So there's going to be dancers. So it's going to be the same thing that you would have seen in Kittaganzibi. It is a powwow, so we'll have all kinds of different dancers. There's going to be a showcase on different styles of dance on our main stage as well. But the powwow is going to be the big thing.
Right. Okay. So it says, enjoy traditional Indigenous foods, inspired by the Anishinaabe Harvest Moon. What would you say is like Indigenous cuisine? What you mentioned you're having elk, but what else would people associate with something like that?
Well, I mean, it definitely depends on what region you're in.
Okay,
and
all right.
As Indigenous people, the land kind of dictates the way you live as well as the food that you eat. So this Friday we'll be enjoying elk, but moose meat is another. Any kind of fish. Yep. Wild rice is another big thing. It's September. It's the end of September, so there's also the harvest moon. So the different crops, like from the Haudenosaunee people, corns, beans, and squash is another type of Indigenous food that is eaten predominantly. Arctic char is another one. I believe that was part of the dinner that we did for the summer solstice event. So there are many different types of Indigenous foods and cultures, and it really just dictates the time of year as well as where you are and which territory you're on.
Okay. So all of this, you have events Friday, and then Saturday and Sunday, is that right?
Yeah.
Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Okay. Now,
so Friday is our reconciliation dinner, and like I mentioned, it's also the day for National Truth and Reconciliation. So we decided to host a dinner where each dinner or ticket that's bought will sponsor a residential school survivor to come and have dinner as well.
Right. Okay. So I'm just wondering, some people may be curious. I'm sure all are welcome, right? You have to register in advance, but everybody is welcome.
Yes.
Right? So wearing orange, like, do you encourage that? Should only people of Indigenous background wear orange or something like that? I'm just some people maybe want to know what's appropriate and what's not appropriate. That's why I want to ask that. So.
Oh, no, that's a great question. Thank you so much for asking. Encourage everybody to wear orange. Any way that you can show support is always welcomed. You know, it's a very hard week for a lot of Indigenous people, and so to feel that support from other people, it would mean a lot to a lot of us. You know, a lot of our residential school survivors have gone through some major things and going their whole life without being believed what they survived. Now we're at a time where we're finally acknowledging it. And so we encourage people to continue educating themselves, to continue learning, wear your orange shirt, talk about what happened, encourage your MPs to continue searching schools, to bringing those children home. You know, it's such a heavy day that any way we can get support is always greatly appreciated.
Okay, that's good to know. All right, so Indigenous-experiences.ca, all the information is there for people who want to know. Tagwagi, which means autumn. Am I saying that right? Tagwagi?
Yeah, autumn or fall, yeah.
Autumn or fall festival at, let me try this again, Madahoki, which means share the land, right?
Yeah, that was much better.
All right, much better. Okay. Hey, that's the journey, right? That's part of the journey. Thank you.
Hey, it's all about learning together, right?
Learning, yep. Excellent. Thank you, Raeanna.
Okay, well, you glitch so much and Joshin.
Hey, bye-bye. Raeanna, Whiteduck.
Take care. We hope to see you this weekend.
Cultural ambassador. 11:29, Rob Snow Show, City News.
Every year, dozens of Canadians are killed or seriously injured because they take risks around railway tracks. Talk to your loved ones about rail safety. Visit stoptracktragedies.ca.
Hi guys, my name is Vi and I'm a part of Encore Ottawa 3. My set at the Meridian Theatre is coming out this week and I hope you tune in.
It's been 2 years later still. I'm Mallory and I was walking home one night when an impaired driver hit me. He had been overserved in 2 bars before getting behind the wheel. If the servers would have called him a cab instead of serving him more alcohol, my life would be the same as what it used to be. I think servers play the biggest role in keeping us safe because it's up to them what state the person's in when they leave. Refusing service isn't personal, it's the law.
Hi, I'm Meg from AIM Fitness, and I'm here with my buddy Fit Finley. Join us every week for Fit Over 50. We'll take you through some low-impact and high-intensity workouts designed to improve your strength and your balance. All you'll need is a resistance band, some light hand weights, and also your water bottle and a sturdy chair. Tune in right here on Rogers TV and let us be part of your weekly routine.
Rogers TV presents a series of original creative stories animated by local authors for children of all ages. Join us for Ottawa Storytellers.
You see a lot of these luxury rental apartments that are coming out, and if you're a single person, it makes it extremely challenging to afford just basic lifestyle needs.
Number 1 for local news, traffic, and weather for Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News 1011 everywhere.
It's Wednesday, September 28th. Good morning. I'm Alex Gouge. Right now in Ottawa and Smiths Falls, it's 13 degrees under mostly cloudy skies. Here's what's making news this hour. Defense Minister Anita Anand says about 600 military members are working in Atlantic Canada to help with recovery efforts following post-tropical storm Fiona. Speaking at a news conference in Ottawa this morning, Anand said the Canadian Armed Forces' presence in the region is steadily increasing. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is in Port-au-Basque, Newfoundland today after surveying the storm damage in Nova Scotia and PEI yesterday. Just shy of a Category 5 hurricane, Ian is rapidly approaching Florida's southwest coast this morning, packing top winds of 250 kilometers per hour. Damaging winds and rains are expected to blast the heavily populated Gulf Coast, with the Naples to Sarasota region at highest risk of a devastating storm surge. U.S. Air Force hurricane hunters confirmed Ian gained strength over warm Gulf of Mexico water after battering Cuba, bringing down the country's electricity grid and leaving the entire island without power. Mayoral candidate Mark Sutcliffe is promising to make Ottawa an official music city if elected next month. Sutcliffe says this includes reviewing current bylaws to make sure they enhance and support music. He would also create a music office, use city parks and community centers for events, and call various aspects of the music industry together to develop a strategy to promote the city as a music destination, rather. City News Time, 11:32. I'm Alex Gouge. For News Anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
He's the opinionated Ottawa icon.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News
1011 FM and 1310 AM.
Every week we take a look at some of the big international news stories with the help of Geoffrey Johnston, who writes about international affairs for the Kingston Whig Standard, and he's back with us this morning on the Rob Snow Show. Good morning.
Good morning, Rob.
I want to begin again Getting your analysis of what we're seeing out of Russia and Ukraine, and why don't we start with this mobilization effort? As I said earlier this morning, it's hard to know what's true, what's not true when you're seeing videos on social media, what's true, what might be propaganda. But nevertheless, there are social media videos that would seem to suggest that these Russian call-ups are really going to be nothing but cannon fodder. They're not in any way trained for the battlefield or equipped for the battlefield. What do you make of this, Geoffrey, what we're seeing here? What are we to make of this?
I agree with you. I think they are cannon fodder. American cable news is reporting on mass exodus of Russians from Russia, men of fighting age trying to get away because they don't want to be cannon fodder. There's even satellite photos of long lines of men at the border. Apparently over the weekend there was huge inflation when it came to airline tickets. Something that used to maybe cost $400 suddenly was costing up to $11,000 to get out of the country. This is harking back to the Second World War when they had a massive mobilization in Russia, and they took everybody and put them in the army. So basically what Russia does is they just throw men out to the front lines, and they get slaughtered. So CNN was reporting yesterday, they did an excellent report very close to the front lines, and they were only in this one little town for about an hour, and they saw 22 dead Russian soldiers, and most of them, as they described them, were boys. They were like 19 years of age. The Russians don't even collect their dead. They just leave them dead in the street. And so people back in Russia know that this is happening, and they're calling up people probably, they supposedly had certain exemptions for health and occupations, but apparently they're not even adhering to those. They're just taking anybody. So I imagine we're going to see an increasing number of protests in Russia, an anti-war movement, because I think a lot of folks aren't going to want to go over and fight. I think a lot of Russian mothers aren't going to want to send their boys. I think it's a really bad situation. I think Ukraine should continue to fight as hard as they can. They have every right to kill the Russian invaders on their territory. But it is going to be a tragedy for the ordinary Russians who have nothing to do with this war, who are going to be taken off the street and sent to Ukraine to be killed in this senseless war, which is sooner or later going to be won by Ukraine. So the Russians would be smart to get rid of Vladimir Putin now and save themselves a lot of heartache later.
Yeah, I was just wondering what kind of turning point this is, this mobilization effort, because of the sheer numbers involved, 300,000, and who knows, maybe more, and whether the Russians could overwhelm Ukraine and the Ukrainian armed forces with just sheer numbers. But now I'm not so sure, just given what I've seen on, but again, it's social media. But go ahead, Geoffrey.
I think what we're seeing, though, is the Russians are fighting this, this war. They're back in like 1942, and the Ukrainians are in 2022 using really high-tech weapons and using new military techniques where independent units have a lot more autonomy. And so the Russians are very flat-footed and centralized, the Ukrainians are, very fleet-footed, and they can move around and use these high-tech weapons, and so they're just picking the Russians apart and cutting their supply lines off. And as we saw earlier in the war, Rob, we saw disaffected Russian soldiers even sabotaging their own equipment, putting sand in their diesel fuel so that the trucks wouldn't work. Russians just dropping their weapons. The biggest weapons supplier to Ukraine now is Russia, because the Russians just basically are donating their weapons, and the Ukrainians then take these captured weapons and turn them against the Russians. So I don't see just throwing a bunch of, untrained men at this problem is going to turn it around. I just don't see that. Putin is really, this is the last trick in his bag, because he's already threatened nuclear war from the very beginning of this conflict, and that hasn't deterred the West. And by the way, if Putin made good on his threat to use tactical nuclear weapons on the battlefield, I think you would see at that point NATO would get involved. They would never cross into Russia, but I could see NATO putting a force into Ukraine to end this conflict as quickly as possible, because as soon as nuclear weapons are used, then there is going to be the real possibility that Putin could then turn those weapons against neighboring Poland. So I don't think Putin is actually going to use nuclear weapons, because I think he knows what would happen.
Okay, let's talk about these sham, fake referendums, illegitimate referendums that have been happening with the they've installed kind of puppet officials in these areas now, these occupied regions of Ukraine. And this is kind of like Crimea 2014 all over again. They kind of did the same thing here. They had referendums in 4 places: Donetsk, Luhansk, Zaporizhzhia, and Kherson. You're talking about 15% of the country here. And some of the results are coming back like 98% of the vote, 99% in favor. And, the spin is going to be, and has already been, well, look, these are Russians. They want to be part of Russia. What do you think of all of this?
Yes, they are shams, sham referenda. They have no force in international law. Nobody should believe them. Canada came out yesterday, a very strong statement, and said that, and Canada called them sham referenda. This, under international law, this has no effect at all. You cannot conquer a place and then annex it under international law. These aren't even conquered areas. These are, right now, the war is still going on in these places. Yeah. And it is not credible to say that these are real elections. This is just another last gasp attempt by Putin to claim these areas, and then he's going to say they're now part of Russia, and any hostilities within them will be met with a nuclear response. That's the end game here. The world is not buying this. Canada and the United States have applied new sanctions in response to these sham referenda, as well we should. This is not real. Canada supports the autonomy of Ukraine and the sovereignty of Ukraine, and this is just a last gasp by a desperate Putin regime to try to salvage something. They're losing the war. Ukraine is going to win. These referenda, in the end, mean nothing.
Okay, we'll be right back. We'll stop here. And then be right back. We'll talk about Iran when we come back, Geoffrey, if that's okay with you.
Absolutely.
Okay? All right. And what's happening in Iran, the protests there. This is the Rob Snow Show. Geoffrey Johnston is our guest from the Kingston Whig Standard, and this is City News.
Join me for Season 3 of Paula Roy's Favorite Foods. That was a lot. I think I need a nap.
I need to know that my voice matters and feel like my opinion is going to have an impact on our society and our youth.
On Thursday's Daytime Ottawa, we invite you to join us for a special edition of the show as we celebrate Truth and Reconciliation Day here at Rogers TV. Our guest will join us to share some powerful stories and, of course, remind us of why we should become allies with Indigenous people across Canada and, of course, around the world. They will share their Indigenous culture and some fabulous food, as well as some wonderful events you can partake in.
I mean, policing in every community is going to be challenged. The community policing model is already a harm reduction response to the way that they police. I just think that we have, again, another opportunity to use police for the things that police should be used for, and then develop some other avenues for things that we can take off a police officer's plate, because it's just not what they should be doing.
Do you have something to share? Let everyone know about your next meeting, your need for volunteers, or your fundraising event on the Rogers TV Community Billboard. Send us your words and we'll bring them to life on Rogers TV and RogersTV.com. When it's time to spread the word, go to rogerstv.com to add your announcement to the community billboard.
Flooding is causing widespread devastation in Pakistan. More than 1,000 people have died. 1/3 of the country is underwater, and 6 million people are in need of emergency assistance. The humanitarian coalition is responding to the crisis in Pakistan. You can help. Donate today at together.ca, and your donation will be matched by the Canadian government. That's together.ca, the humanitarian coalition. Together, saving more lives.
Join me next time on Simply Cooking by Chef, where I'm going to show you how to make a traditional pizza and even a gluten-free one, all from scratch.
Strong voice.
Strong opinions.
Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Geoffrey Johnston with us, writes about international affairs for the Kingston Whig Standard, correspondent for the Rob Snow Show in our Brockville Bureau. He's our Brockville Bureau chief. Got a competitive municipal election down there in Brock Vegas these days, Geoffrey. Is it worth watching, paying attention to? Are you paying attention to it? Or
Yeah, the big race, I think, will be out where I live, out in Elizabethtown, Kitley Township for mayor. That'll be interesting.
What's it called?
I live in Elizabethtown, Kitley. I live out in the
Elizabethtown,
country,
Kitley Township. Okay, well, I'll have to get you on. Sam and I are doing an election night show, so you can be our Elizabethtown Litley bureau chief for that night. Report on the election
the booming
results.
metropolis.
Yeah, no, it sounds lovely. It sounds lovely. My gosh, what's happening in the UK is crazy, isn't it, Geoffrey?
Yeah.
The currency.
The wheels have come off the cart, I'd say.
Yeah, they're quite pleased in the labor quarters these days. There doesn't have to be an election, though, I don't think, until 2025. So
yeah, a lot could happen, and there's a lot of turmoil globally too, with inflation, the pandemic.
Oh yes,
supply chains. So there are
energy crisis. Right.
That's right. So any sort of stimulus at this point is probably going to be inflationary, and that includes tax cuts. Any government at this point, regardless of political stripe, is caught between the devil and the deep blue sea, because you're trying to manage inflation, but you also don't want to tip your economy into recession, and you don't want people to lose their jobs. And I remember, as a teenager, living through the period of stagflation, and that's when you have high unemployment and high inflation at the same time. And theoretically, before that time, it was impossible to have high inflation and high unemployment at the same time. And that was a devastating time in the late 1970s. And we certainly don't want to live through that again. And I think many governments are worried about that. And I think many central banks are worried about it. And I know the IMF and the World Bank are both worried about it.
Just before we talk about Iran again, do you think it's out of the realm of possibility that the Russians would sabotage the Nord Stream 2 pipeline?
I would not put anything by the Russians. I don't want to get into conspiracy theories. I mean, who knows what's going on? I think they probably didn't. I'm not sure what was going on there. I'm going to wait and see before I actually speculate, because I think there are a lot of moving parts.
All right. Okay. Mahsa Amini, 22 years old, Kurdish woman, showing a little bit of hair from under her hijab, is stopped by the morality police in Tehran and is, the story goes, beaten to death. Sparks widespread protests, women-led protests, but not just women now. The question is, what will happen? Will it become a wider protest, maybe even turn into some kind of revolutionary movement? Or will the regime in Iran manage to do what it's so successfully done since 1979 and brutally put down any signs of dissent? What do you think?
Yeah, well, first of all, it is a tragedy that this young woman, Masha Amini, was killed. 22. I have an 18-year-old daughter, so that really hits home. And that generation of young women are really quite remarkable. They're smart and they're strong, and they believe in human rights and women's rights. And as Hillary Clinton said back at the UN Women's Conference back in Beijing back in the 1990s when she was First Lady, women's rights are human rights. Human rights are women's rights. And what we're seeing right now, according to an organization called United Nations Women, which is part of the UN, there are protests in over 80 cities right now. Amnesty International is saying that the Iranian security forces are being very brutal, and they're killing protesters. They're shooting down young women and their allies, young men, in the street. The United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees is calling upon the Iranian regime to give due process of law to all those women who have been arrested during these protests. And the UN High Commissioner is also asking for special investigations into the killing of any protesters and anybody who's responsible being held to account. I think the regime is afraid that this is going to spin off into something, into a revolution, and that's why they're using deadly force. I think it's important for us on this show and in Canada to say that this is an organic movement. It's a grassroots movement. The regime always likes to portray these things as Western plots. We're not causing this.
And they're doing that again. They're doing that again.
They're doing that again. It's important for us to say that we're not promoting some sort of revolution. We are watching and we are supporting human rights defenders, and we speak out in defense of human rights to give those people in Iran the room they need to defend their own rights. But I could see this becoming something much larger.
Okay, very interesting. All right, Geoffrey, we'll wrap it up there for this week. Great to hear from you.
Thank you, Rob.
Okay, bye-bye. Geoffrey Johnston writes about international affairs for the Kingston Whig Standard. Sam LaPrade, funny enough, is the host of the Sam LaPrade Show, and that comes up right after the noon news.
Right.
Here on City News. Incredible scenes out of Iran, right? It's quite something to see. We'll see what happens there.
Absolutely.
Are you following that story?
I am, yeah. And it's, I really find people haven't really, I'm hoping people get more aware in terms of the West, knowing what's happening there, but it really is really challenging to see.
So we're getting down to it here with the municipal election.
Absolutely.
We had 3 candidates for mayor on yesterday. I quite enjoyed that discussion. We always talk about the front runners.
Right.
The front runners. Mike McGuire was on, Noor Kadri, and Parim Singh. All very impressive.
I heard it was
a lot of fun too to hear from people who aren't the front runners and who have the media have largely written off.
Different ideas,
interesting ideas, nonetheless.
Well, I've said this to you before too. I mean, anybody that puts their name on a ballot, I have a lot of respect.
Oh,
for
sure,
that.
Sure. So you have today 2 candidates for mayor.
I do.
It's the place to be.
It definitely is.
Right?
Catherine McKinney is going to join us as well as Mike McGuire. Lots of platforms being released, of course. Yeah. Big debate happening tonight, so that's going to be...
debate tonight.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's the debate?
I believe it's on climate. Tonight.
Oh, another one on climate.
I could be wrong about that. I think it's climate.
Yeah, David said.
Yeah.
Yes,
do you really
last of 4.
Yeah.
Last of 4.
Do you really need to have 4 debates on climate change?
I don't know. I think there's lots of topics that need to be...
You've been involved in election campaigns before. Would you advise a candidate to attend 4 debates on climate change?
With such an incredibly tight race, I think it didn't need to be 4 in my mind. With so many other
why not have
topics.
A Rogers debate on climate change? Put it on YouTube and it's there forever.
My understanding is there's going to be a mayoral debate on Rogers TV, which is going to be very
I didn't think there was supposed to be one at the beginning, so that'll be good. That'll be good. Okay. So, Catherine McKenney, candidate for mayor, on the show. That'll be about the transparency announcement. These are the people who have donated to my campaign or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Mike McGuire. Was on my show yesterday. He's back on your show today, and he's out with his climate plan.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, busy show today. We have lots of great guests for you. Actually, really anxious to speak with Acting Inspector Nicole St. John from Ottawa Police Service regarding the use of the word femicide.
Okay.
And OPS put out maybe about a week ago on Twitter saying they're going to start using that term.
Oh, they are?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. That's interesting. We were just talking about that with Bruce McIntyre from the Eganville Leader about, when will we start to see some action from the provincial government after the inquest into the murders of the 3 women in the Ottawa Valley at the hands of Basil Barutsky. So, very important story there, Sam. And Henderson scores for Canada.
It's so
this is the anniversary of that, I guess, right?
Yes.
Like the actual Henderson scores for Canada moment. And you have someone who's from Ottawa, but was there when it happened.
And he is a fantastic storyteller. It's going to be great to get caught up with Ross Cohen, and he's going to tell that story to us a little bit later in the show. And it's just one of those moments, and he's so excited to share with us on City News. You won't want to miss it, honestly. It's a fantastic story. And I have to tell my own Paul Henderson story. So I got on
a Paul Henderson
I
story?
do. So I got on a plane one day.
Yeah.
And I was going to Toronto. It was just a quick business trip. And the flight attendant came over and said, "Oh, Mr. Henderson, this is going to be," and I thought I had recognized him. Like I think that's Paul Henderson. But when she said, "Oh, Mr. Henderson," well, I couldn't even focus.
Right.
The rest of the flight, I don't even know if I was buckled up. I didn't want any peanuts.
Right.
And at his wife was sitting beside me, and he was sitting beside her. And about halfway through, I turned to his wife and I said, "This is incredible." So then we had a nice chat. They were very, very gracious, very kind.
These in the days of selfies, like could you get?
It wasn't.
Selfie? No.
That's what I'm saying. This is a long time ago. Long time ago.
Yeah.
Believe me, I would have tried to get a selfie for sure. And but yeah, just a really, really nice gentleman. I worked with him as well on an event called Hockey for the Homeless. Him and Lori Boschman and Gary Galley and a lot of those great guys. So yes, I'm thrilled. It's a big day.
Yeah, it's not my vintage, but it was certainly my father's vintage.
Mm-hmm.
He was like early 20s, newly married, and I was like a baby, 1 year old when that happened.
Me too. I was one too.
So when I would have trouble falling asleep as a toddler, that's what he would tell as a bedtime story. The story of the 72 series.
Okay, that is the best story. Right? I love that.
And Henderson, little boy, scores for Canada.
Wow.
Right. And we win over those Soviets.
I love that.
Yeah, isn't that crazy?
Aw, thanks for sharing that. That's very cool.
So Sam LaPrade is coming up again, and we'll keep you company this afternoon until 2 o'clock, at which point we will turn it over to our great news team. The noon news is next. Tomorrow, I'm away on Friday because I'll be attending some stuff to do with Truth and Reconciliation on Friday. So no Rob Snow Show on Friday. So tomorrow we're going to do the free-for-all tomorrow for the Talk Back Hour. So it's wide open on topics tomorrow. And Derek Fage will be on the show tomorrow. It's always a lot of fun with Derek. Thank you, Sam.
Thank you.
Good to see you. And this is the Rob Snow Show on City News.
The Rob Snow Show.
Weekdays 9 to noon on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
#1 for local news in Ottawa and the Valley.